Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Nightmare Narratives. I can picture some of you already in bed, maybe some of you just getting home from work. Wherever you are, whatever time it is, I'm glad you're here. If this helps you relax or sleep, please like and subscribe. It means a lot. Now let's get you comfortable, and I'll tell you tonight's story. My name is James Whitfield, but everyone calls me Jimmy. I've been a ranger in Cherokee National Forest for 15 years now. That's longer than my oldest kid has been alive. I've pulled 47 lost hikers out of these mountains, set more broken bones than I can count, and once talked a black bear away from a family's campsite using nothing but a flashlight and a loud voice. I'm telling you this so you understand I'm not the kind of guy who scares easy. I grew up in these Tennessee hills. My daddy worked the coal mines before they shut down. Came home every night black as midnight. I know these mountains. I know what's dangerous and what's just mountain talk. Or at least, I thought I did. It was late October of 1974 when everything I knew turned inside out. The leaves were half fallen, and that special kind of cold had settled in the kind that gets in your bones and won't leave. I was running the Big South Fork area that month, the part of the forest that butts up against the old mining country. I had a scout troop coming in for a weekend camp. 8 boys, ages 11 to 13, plus their leader Frank Mercer. Frank was a good man, been doing scout trips for 6 years. These weren't city kids lost in the woods for the first time they knew what they were doing. The campsite they picked was about 18 miles from the nearest town, up an old mining road that washed out every spring and got fixed every summer. Beautiful spot, really. Flat area by a creek, surrounded by steep ridges covered in oak and pine. The only weird thing about it was the ruins. About a quarter mile from their camp, there was an old coal company town. Just foundations now, mostly. Rotted wood and rusted metal poking through the leaves. The mine entrance had been sealed with concrete back in the 30s, after the accident. I didn't think much about it at the time. There are abandoned mines all over this part of Tennessee. Most folks don't even know they're there. Frank called me on the radio Friday evening, right as I was finishing my patrol route. His voice sounded normal, maybe a little excited, the way people get on their first night camping. Ranger Whitfield, just checking in. We're all set up. Boys are cooking hot dogs. Weather looks clear. Copy that, Frank. You need anything, I'm about 40 minutes out. We're good. See you Sunday for pickup. That was the last normal conversation I ever had with Frank Mercer. Saturday morning, I woke up to my wife shaking my shoulder. The phone was ringing. It was still dark out, maybe 5 in the morning. Jimmy, she said, it's the station. My supervisor, Dale, was on the line. His voice had that tight quality that means something's gone real wrong. We got a call from Frank Mercer's wife. He was supposed to check in last night at 8. Never did. She can't raise him on the radio. I felt my stomach drop. Radio silence wasn't like Frank. I'm heading out now, I said. State police are already on their way. This is a missing children situation now. 8 kids, Jimmy. I drove that washed-out mining road faster than I should have, my truck bouncing over ruts and rocks. The sun was just coming up, turning the fog in the valleys pink and gold. It should have been beautiful. Instead, it felt wrong somehow. Too quiet. Even the birds weren't singing. When I got to the campsite, there were already 2 state police cars there. Frank's truck was parked where it should be. The tents were all set up proper. A pot of what looked like oatmeal sat on the camp stove, stone cold. But there wasn't a single person anywhere. Ranger Whitfield? A state trooper walked over, a young guy I didn't recognize. I'm Officer Davis. We've been here 20 minutes. Haven't found anyone yet. Their gear's all here, I said, looking around. Sleeping bags in the tents, backpacks hung on the food line like they should be. Where's Frank? That's the weird part. Davis led me to the edge of camp, where the trees started. We found this. Frank Mercer was sitting against a tree, staring at nothing. His eyes were open, but he wasn't seeing anything. Drool ran down his chin. When Davis waved a hand in front of his face, Frank didn't even blink. Frank? I knelt down in front of him. Frank, it's Jimmy Whitfield. Where are the boys? His mouth moved. At first, I thought he was trying to talk. Then I realized he was singing something, so quiet I could barely hear it. Ring around the rosy, pocket full of posies. Ashes, ashes, we all fall down. Over and over, that children's rhyme, nothing else. I felt something cold crawl up my spine. Get him to a hospital, I said. Now. That's when I noticed the smell. Like coal dust. Heavy and sharp, coating the back of my throat. But there hadn't been an active coal mine in this area for 50 years. By noon, we had 20 people searching. State police, local volunteers, tracking dogs from 2 counties over. I'd been on plenty of search and rescues, and this one should have been simple. 8 kids don't just vanish. They leave tracks, they make noise, they get found. But nothing about this search was simple. The dogs couldn't pick up a trail. They'd start at the campsite, circle around, then sit down and whine. Wouldn't go any further. Old Ben Morrison, who'd been tracking in these mountains for 40 years, said he'd never seen dogs act like that. It's like the scent just stops, he said. Like those kids just stopped existing right here. We spread out in a grid pattern, 20 yards apart, moving through the forest. I took the section heading toward the old mining ruins. The temperature seemed to drop as I got closer, even though the sun was high and bright. That's when I heard it. Singing. Children's voices, high and clear, coming from somewhere ahead. My heart jumped. I keyed my radio. I've got something. Children singing, about 200 yards west of camp, near the old ruins. I started running, crashing through the brush. The singing got louder. I could make out words now, some old song I didn't recognize. Something about going down into the ground, about the darkness and the cold. "Hello," I shouted. "Scout Troop 47, can you hear me?" The singing stopped. I burst into the clearing where the old company town had been. Just foundations and rubble, like always. No children, no movement, nothing. "Hello?" I called again. Silence. Then, from behind me, so close I felt breath on my neck. "We're playing hide and seek. Do you want to play?" I spun around. Nobody there. My radio crackled. "Whitfield, did you find them?" No. I thought I heard. I stopped. How did I explain that I'd heard kids singing in an empty forest? That I'd felt someone standing right behind me when there was no one there? "Negative," I said. "False. Alarm." But my hands were shaking. We searched until dark and found nothing. The state police called in the FBI, because that's what you do when 8 children vanish without a trace. They set up a command post at the campsite, brought in generators and lights. I should have gone home. I'd been up for 16 hours straight, but I couldn't leave. Around midnight, I was standing at the edge of camp, drinking bad coffee from a thermos, when I saw the lights. Little flickering lights, like lanterns, moving through the trees. Heading toward the old mine entrance. "Hey!" I grabbed the nearest FBI agent, a woman named Mills. "You see that?" "See what?" "The lights." "There," I pointed, but they were gone. There were lights, moving through the trees. Agent Mills gave me a look. The kind of look that says she thinks I need sleep more than coffee. "Ranger Whitfield, you've been at this all day. Maybe you should—" "I know what I saw," I said. But when I went to investigate, there was nothing. Just dark trees and dead leaves. I did find something else, though. On a flat rock near the sealed mine entrance, someone had arranged a circle of small stones. Inside the circle were 8 pennies, all lined up in a row. Old pennies, the kind with wheat on the back. The newest one was from 1928. "Mills!" I called. "You need to see this." She came over with a flashlight. We both stared at the pennies. "Could be from the old mining camp," she said. "Kids exploring might have found them. On top of this rock, arranged in a perfect circle." I shook my head. "Someone put these here. Recently." "Ranger, are you saying someone took these kids?" I didn't know what I was saying. I just knew that my skin was crawling, and every instinct I had was screaming that something was very, very wrong. That night, 3 volunteers from the search party vanished. They were doing a grid search at first light Sunday morning. One minute they were there, calling out coordinates on their radios. The next minute, silence. We found their radios on the ground, still on, still transmitting nothing but static. No tracks, no signs of struggle, just gone. And on another rock, we found 11 pennies now, all from before 1930. The FBI closed the whole area. No more volunteers. Just professional law enforcement and me, because I knew the terrain. They brought in thermal cameras and helicopters and every piece of technology they had. None of it helped. On Monday afternoon, I was sitting in the command post tent, staring at a map and trying to make sense of it all, when I heard my daughter's voice. "Daddy?" I jumped up so fast my chair fell over. "Sarah?" Sarah was 7 years old, safe at home with my wife. She wasn't here. She couldn't be here. "Daddy, I'm scared. Come find me." The voice was coming from outside the tent. I ran out into the cold afternoon, my heart hammering. "Sarah, down. Here, Daddy. In the dark place. It's cold." The voice was coming from the sealed mine entrance. I stood there, staring at that wall of old concrete, and heard my daughter calling for help from the other side. That's when I knew. Whatever had taken those kids, it wasn't human, and it knew exactly how to hurt me. Agent Mills wouldn't let me near the mine entrance. She thought I was losing it, and maybe she was right. How do you explain to someone that you heard your daughter, who's safely at home 60 miles away, calling from inside a sealed mine shaft? I called home on the radio. My wife answered on the second ring. "Is Sarah okay?" I asked. "She's fine, Jimmy. She's right here watching TV. What's wrong?" "Let me talk to her." Sarah got on the radio, confused but okay. I could hear the cartoon she was watching in the background. She was safe. She was home. So what had I heard at the mine? The FBI brought in a team to open the sealed mine entrance. They used jackhammers and crowbars, and it took them 6 hours to break through that old concrete. I watched from a distance, every muscle in my body tense. When they finally got it open, cold air rushed out. Not just cold freezing, like opening a door to winter. And with it came that smell of coal dust, so strong it made my eyes water. Agent Mills went in first with a team of 4 agents, all carrying flashlights and radios. I wasn't supposed to follow, but I did anyway. This was my forest. Those kids were my responsibility. The mine tunnel was bigger than I expected, wide enough for 3 people to walk side by side, with old wooden support beams every few feet. Our flashlights showed rusted metal tracks where coal cars used to run. "Stay close," Mills said. "These old mines are unstable." We'd gone maybe 100 feet when we heard the singing again. This time, all of us heard it. Children's voices echoing through the tunnels. That same strange song about going down into the darkness. "Federal agents," Mills shouted. "If anyone is here, identify yourself." The singing stopped, then came the laughter. High and bright, like kids playing at recess. It bounced off the walls, coming from everywhere and nowhere. One of the agents, a big guy named Torres, pointed his flashlight down a side tunnel. I saw something, small, moving fast. "Probably a kid," another agent said. "Let's go." "Wait," I started, but they were already heading down the side tunnel. Mills and I followed. The tunnel got narrower, the ceiling lower. The air got colder and colder until I could see my breath in the flashlight beam. We found Torres standing still in the middle of the tunnel, his light pointing at the wall. "Torres," Mills called. "What is it?" He didn't answer. As we got closer, I saw what he was looking at. Handprints. Small handprints, like children's hands, pressed into the coal dust on the walls. Hundreds of them, maybe. Thousands. Covering every surface. They went up to the ceiling, down to the floor, everywhere. "Jesus," Mills whispered. "These tunnels were sealed in 1935, I said. "There shouldn't be any dust. It should all be settled or gone." Torres reached out to touch one of the prints. The moment his fingers made contact, all our flashlights went out. Complete darkness. The kind of dark you only find underground, where your eyes can't adjust because there's absolutely no light. Then we heard the children again. Not singing this time, whispering. All around us, pressed up close. "Join us. Play with us. Stay with us forever." My flashlight flickered back on. In that brief flash of light, I saw them. Children, dozens of them, pale as paper, covered in coal dust, wearing clothes from another era. Standing in the tunnel with us, so close I could touch them. Empty sockets where their eyes should have been. Then the light went out again. Someone screamed, We think it was me. We all ran, stumbling in the dark, hands on the tunnel walls, trying to find our way back to the entrance. The whispers followed us. "Stay, play, join us in the dark." We burst out of the mine entrance into daylight. I fell to my knees, gasping. Torres was crying. Mills was white as a sheet. "We need to seal that back up," she said. "Right now. Nobody goes in there again. But it was too late. That night, 3 more FBI agents disappeared. They were in their tents, 50 feet from the command post, with guards on duty. 1 minute they were there. The next minute, gone. And I found more pennies, 14 now, arranged in a circle on the rock. 14 coins for 14 missing people. I drove into the nearest town that night, to the old library. I needed to know what happened at that mine. The librarian, a tiny old woman named Mrs. Chen, helped me dig through boxes of old newspapers. We found it in a paper from December 1927. Mining disaster claims 37 lives. The article said a tunnel collapsed during the day shift. 23 men died. But what made me go cold was the next paragraph. 14 children, ages 8 to 13, were also killed in the collapse. They had entered the mine to bring lunch to their fathers against company policy. Their bodies were never recovered. The mine was sealed as a mass grave. 14 children, 14 pennies. I went to see Moses Walking Bear, an elder from the Cherokee community. He lived alone in a cabin 20 miles into the forest. Took me 2 hours on bad roads to find him. When I told him what was happening, he didn't look surprised. The hollow children, he said. My grandfather told me about them. Children who died in the dark places. They don't understand they're dead. They just want other children to play with. How do I stop them? You don't stop them. You can only protect yourself. He gave me a leather pouch filled with tobacco and sage. Say the old words. The Cherokee blessing for safe passage through dark places. And carry iron. The old spirits fear it. He taught me the words. Made me repeat them until I had them right. I drove back to camp as fast as I could. The sun was setting, and I knew the hollow children came out at night. When I got there, the command post was in chaos. Agent Mills was gone, just vanished from her tent while someone was standing guard 10 feet away. And on the rock by the mine, there were now 21 pennies. We'd lost 21 people. I knew what I had to do. Those scout kids were down there somewhere. The volunteers, the agents, maybe some of them were still alive. I grabbed my pack, my flashlight, and my grandfather's old mining pick, solid iron, heavy as sin. I'm going in. I told the senior FBI agent, a guy named Carson. Like hell you are. That mine is off limits. Those are children down there. I'm not leaving them. Whitfield. Everyone who goes in that mine disappears. You'll just be number 22. Then I'll be number 22. I went into the mine alone, carrying iron and prayers, and I went to find the hollow children. The mine was different at night. The darkness felt alive, pressing against me from all sides. My flashlight beam seemed weaker, like the dark was eating the light. I said the Cherokee words Moses taught me, over and over like a prayer. Protect me in dark places, guide me to the light, turn away the spirits of the lost. The tunnel went deeper than I thought possible. Down and down, following those old metal tracks. The walls were covered in those handprints, thousands of them, like wallpaper made of coal dust and small fingers. Then I heard the singing again, but this time I recognized one of the voices. Tommy Chen, one of the scouts. 12 years old, loved baseball, wanted to be a pilot. Tommy, I shouted. Tommy, it's Ranger Whitfield. Where are you? Down here, his voice echoed back. We're all down here. Come play with us, Mr. Whitfield. It's fun in the dark. That wasn't right. Tommy would never call me Mr. Whitfield. He called me Ranger Jimmy. That's not Tommy, I whispered to myself. That's not Tommy. But I followed the voice anyway, because what else could I do? The tunnel opened into a huge chamber. Must have been where they dug out the coal. My flashlight showed old equipment, rusted carts, broken tools, rotted wooden beams, and children. They stood in a circle in the center of the chamber. The 8 scouts, the 3 volunteers, the FBI agents, all of them holding hands, their faces pale, their eyes empty and dark. There you are, one of them said. It looked like Tommy, but his voice was wrong. Too old, too cold. We've been waiting for you. Tommy, listen to me. You need to wake up. You're not. We've been waiting so long, another child said. This one looked like a girl in an old-fashioned dress covered in coal dust. We've been alone in the dark. It's cold here. It's so cold. More children stepped out of the shadows, dozens of them. The hollow children. wearing clothes from the 1920 seconds, their faces gray as ash, empty holes where their eyes should be. "We just wanted friends," the girl said. "We just wanted someone to play with, someone to keep us warm." "You're hurting them," I said, pointing at the scouts. "Look at them. They're not okay." For the first time, I really looked at the scout kids. They'd only been missing 5 days, but they looked years older. Their faces were thin, their hair gray at the edges, like something was draining the life out of them. "We're teaching them to play our games," the girl said. "Soon, they'll be like us. Then they won't be cold anymore. Then they won't be lonely." "Let them go," I said, "but we need them. We've been alone so long." The hollow children moved closer, surrounding us. "And now you're here too. Such a kind man. You can stay with us. We can all stay together. Forever and ever and ever." The circle tightened. I could feel their cold radiating off them like winter itself. I gripped my grandfather's pick and started saying the Cherokee blessing. Loud this time, not whispering. The hollow children hissed and pulled back. "That's old magic," the girl said. "That's not fair. Nothing about this is fair." I swung the iron pick in a wide arc. "These children have families. They have homes. You can't keep them." "We have no homes," the girl said, and for a moment she sounded sad. Really sad. "Our homes are gone. Our families are gone. The dark took us, and there's nothing left but cold and coal dust and empty." I realized then they weren't evil. They were just dead children who didn't understand they were dead, lonely and scared and desperate for company in the dark. But that didn't change what they were doing. "I'm sorry," I said. "I'm sorry you died. I'm sorry you were alone. But you can't do this. You have to let them go." "No." The girl's voice turned into a shriek that echoed off the stone walls. "They're ours now. You can't take them." The hollow children rushed at me all at once. I swung the pick, and where the iron touched them, they screamed and scattered like smoke. But there were too many. They grabbed at my clothes, my arms, my face. Their touch was freezing, burning cold that went straight to the bone. "Join us. Stay with us. Be with us forever." I fell to my knees, the cold seeping into my chest. My flashlight died. In the dark, I could feel them all around me, pulling me down into the coal and the dirt. Then I heard a voice. A real voice, human and warm. "Ranger Jimmy." Tommy Chen, the real Tommy, fighting against whatever held him. "Tommy!" I gasped. The iron," he said, his words slurred but determined. Throw it." With the last of my strength, I hurled the iron pick across the chamber. It hit the ground with a clang that rang like a bell. The hollow children shrieked and pulled back. In that moment of freedom, I grabbed Tommy's hand, then reached for another scout. Another. "Run!" I shouted. We ran, stumbling in the dark, following the tracks by feel. The hollow children screamed behind us, but they didn't follow past where the pick had fallen. Like it had drawn a line they couldn't cross. I counted as we ran. 7 scouts. I'd gotten 7. 1 was missing. We burst out of the mine into the gray light of dawn. I pulled the boys into the sunlight, and they collapsed on the ground, gasping and crying. The FBI agents rushed over. The boys were alive. Aged and traumatized and not okay, but alive. "Where's Frank?" I asked. "The other agents?" Tommy looked at me with eyes that had seen too much. "They're still down there," he whispered. "They wanted to stay. They said it wasn't cold anymore." I looked back at the mine entrance. From deep inside, I could hear singing. And now I recognized Agent Mill's voice among the children's voices. "Which scout didn't come out?" I asked, though I already knew. "Billy Watson," Tommy said. He liked it there. He said his dad would never hit him again in the dark. Billy Watson, 11 years old, came to every scout meeting with new bruises. I tried to go back in. It took 3 FBI agents to hold me back. "Whitfield, stop. You got 7 out. That's a miracle." But I'd left a child in the dark. I'd left him with the hollow children. They sealed the mine again that day, poured concrete 3 feet thick, put up fences and warning signs. It didn't matter. The hollow children didn't need the mine to be open. They were already everywhere in those hills, in every old mine shaft, every forgotten tunnel. They were still waiting, still cold, still lonely, still looking for children to play with, in the dark. They sent the 7 scouts home after 3 weeks in the hospital. The doctors couldn't explain why boys who'd been missing for 5 days looked like they'd aged 5 years. Gray hair, brittle bones, hearts that beat too slow. Tommy Chen's parents had to homeschool him. He couldn't sleep without all the lights on. He told his mom he could still hear the singing sometimes. Frank Mercer never woke up. He's in a nursing home now, still singing that children's rhyme, over and over, for 18 years. Agent Mills was never found. Neither were the 3 volunteers. Neither was Billy Watson. The FBI closed the case as unresolved. The official report said the children got lost in old mine tunnels and suffered from exposure and trauma. It didn't mention the Hollow children, didn't mention the impossible things we all saw. I transferred to a different forest 3 months later. Told myself it was for a promotion, better pay. But the truth was, I couldn't work with children anymore. Couldn't lead scout groups or summer camps or school field trips. Every time I looked at kids, I saw empty eye sockets and pale faces covered in coal dust. My wife says I wake up some nights saying the Cherokee blessing. The words Moses taught me. I don't remember doing it. I don't work in Cherokee National Forest anymore, but I keep track of the news from that area. Every few years, there's a story. Hikers who go missing near old mining country. Children who wander off and come back, different, older, colder, talking about friends in the dark. Last autumn, someone found 28 pennies arranged in a circle on that rock, all from before 1930. 28 coins for 28 souls down in the dark. The thing is, there are hundreds of sealed mines in Appalachia. Thousands, maybe. Old coal towns where children died in collapses, explosions, accidents. Places where the lonely dead wait in the cold and the dark. And children still go camping in those mountains. Still go hiking with their families. Still play near old ruins and sealed mine entrances. If you ever visit the old mining country, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, watch your kids close. Real close. If they start talking about new friends who want to play games in the dark, you pack up and leave. Right then. Don't wait. And if you hear children singing where no children should be, you run. You run and you don't look back. Because the Hollow children are still down there, still cold, still lonely, still waiting for someone to play with. My name is James Whitfield. I've been a ranger for 18 years now. I've saved a lot of lives in these mountains. But I couldn't save them all. And on quiet nights, when the wind blows through the hollers just right, I can still hear them singing. My name is Elizabeth Caldwell, but everyone calls me Liz. I've been a ranger at Jefferson National Forest in Virginia for 11 years now. My specialty is wildlife management, specifically venomous species control. I know that sounds fancy, but what it really means is I'm the person they call when there's a snake problem. I grew up catching copperheads with my bare hands. My daddy thought I was crazy, but I loved snakes, studied them in college, got my PhD in herpetology, and even published some papers about venom resistance. Over the years, I've been bitten 23 times by different venomous species. My body built up immunities. It's rare, but it happens to some people who work with snakes long enough. I never believed in the supernatural. Ghosts, demons, possessed animals, none of it. I'm a scientist. I deal in facts. When people told me about evil spirits living in serpents, I'd just smile and nod. Religious folks in Appalachia have been handling snakes in churches for over 100 years. I always thought it was just misguided faith, people risking their lives to prove their devotion to God. I was wrong. It was late August of 1987, the kind of humid Virginia summer that makes your shirt stick to your back the second you step outside. I was finishing up some paperwork at the ranger station when Sheriff Tom Bradley called. His voice was shaking. "Liz, we need you out at the Church of Signs and Wonders. Right now." The Church of Signs and Wonders was one of those snake-handling churches tucked way back in the woods, about 15 miles from the nearest town. You had to take a private dirt road to get there, and most people didn't even know it existed. The congregation kept to themselves. "What's the problem, Tom?" I asked, already grabbing my keys. "Just get here, please." The drive took 40 minutes on winding mountain roads. Dense laurel thickets pressed in from both sides, and rocky outcrops jutted up like broken teeth. This was perfect snake country, timber rattlers, copperheads, even the occasional cottonmouth near the creeks. When I pulled up to the church compound, there were 5 police cars, 2 ambulances, and a state health department van. Officers stood around in small groups, some of them looking pale. One young deputy was throwing up behind a tree. Sheriff Bradley met me before I even got out of my truck. His face was gray. "Liz, I've been doing this job for 26 years. I've never seen anything like this." "Like what?" He didn't answer, just led me toward the church. The building was small, white clapboard with a crooked steeple. The front door stood open. Even from outside, I could smell it, that thick, musky smell that snakes give off when they're stressed or there's a lot of them in one place. "How many people?" I asked. 40. The entire congregation." He stopped walking and turned to me. "They're all dead, Liz. Every single one. Snake bites." I felt my stomach drop. 40 people at the same time? That's what it looks like. Pastor held a service last night. When nobody showed up for work this morning, people got worried. Deputy Harris came to check on them around noon. We stepped inside. I've seen a lot in my career, but nothing prepared me for this. Bodies were everywhere, slumped in pews, sprawled on the floor, collapsed at the altar. Men, women, even a few teenagers. Their skin had that grayish-blue color that comes from severe envenomation. Some had foam around their mouths, others had bled from their eyes and ears. But what made my hands start shaking was the bite marks. Everyone had multiple bites: arms, legs, necks, faces. Some people had 20 or 30 puncture wounds. "Sweet Jesus," I whispered. Dr. Sarah Chen from the State Health Department was examining one of the bodies. She looked up when we entered, and I saw fear in her eyes. "Ranger Caldwell, thank God. I need your expertise. Here." I walked over, forcing myself to breathe through my mouth. The victim was a woman in her 50s, wearing a floral dress. Her arms were covered in bite marks. "The bite patterns," Dr. Chen said quietly. "They don't match any normal snake behavior I know of." She was right. Snakes don't attack like this. They strike defensively, usually once, then retreat. They don't swarm. They don't coordinate. "Where are the snakes now?" I asked. Sheriff Bradley pointed to a door at the back of the church. "Snake pits through there. We haven't gone in yet. Waiting for you." The back room was accessed through a heavy wooden door with a handmade sign, "Serpent Sanctuary. Only the faithful may enter." I pulled on my thick leather gloves and grabbed my snake hook from my gear bag. "Stay behind me. If there are aggressive snakes in there, I need room to work." I pushed open the door. The smell hit me first, so strong I almost gagged. The room was dark, except for dim, sunlight filtering through boarded-up windows. As my eyes adjusted, I saw them. Snakes. Everywhere. Glass terrariums lined every wall, stacked 3 and 4 high. But most of the snakes weren't in the terrariums. They were loose, covering the floor like a living carpet. Timber rattlers, copperheads, water moccasins, eastern diamondbacks. Species that shouldn't even be in the same room together, let alone the same habitat. I counted at least 200 snakes, maybe more. "Mother of God," Sheriff Bradley breathed behind me. But something was wrong. The snakes weren't moving normally. They were all oriented in the same direction, their heads pointing toward the center of the room. And they were completely silent. Not one rattle, not one hiss. In the middle of the room was a large wooden box, about the size of a coffin, with air holes drilled in the sides. "What the hell is that?" Dr. Chen asked. I didn't answer. I was watching the snakes. They weren't paying any attention to us at all. Every single one was focused on that box. I took a careful step forward. The snakes didn't react. Another step. Still nothing. It was like they couldn't even see us. "This isn't normal behavior," I said. "Not even close." "What are they doing?" the sheriff asked. "I don't know." I made my way to the box, stepping over and around snakes that didn't move. My heart was hammering. Every instinct I had was screaming that something was very, very wrong. The box had a latch on top. With shaking hands, I reached out and opened it. Inside was the biggest timber rattlesnake I'd ever seen. It had to be 7 feet long, thick as my arm, with patterns on its scales that seemed to shift in the dim light. Its head was raised, and it was staring right at me. But it was its eyes that made me freeze. They weren't normal snake eyes. They were too aware, too intelligent, and they were looking at me like it knew me. "Holy hell, that's a big one," Sheriff Bradley said. The giant rattler's tongue flicked out, tasting the air. The moment it did, every snake in the room began to move. Not toward us, toward each other. "Back up," I said quietly. "Everybody back up slowly." We retreated to the doorway as the snakes on the floor began to crawl over and around each other, forming a pile in the center of the room. They weren't fighting or fleeing, they were organizing, moving with purpose. The pile grew higher, 3 feet, 4 feet, 5 feet. "They're working together, Doctor," Chen whispered. "That's impossible. Snakes are solitary." The mass of snakes began to take shape. It was forming into something that looked almost human. A head, shoulders, arms. I slammed the door shut. For a long moment, nobody spoke. We just stood there in the church, breathing hard, trying to process what we'd just seen. "Did that just happen?" Sheriff Bradley finally asked. "Did we really see that?" Before anyone could answer, we heard a sound from behind the door. A voice, raspy and wet, like someone talking through a mouthful of water. "Elizabeth." My blood turned to ice. The voice knew my name. Dr. Chen grabbed my arm. "We need to leave, right now." "How does it know my name?" I asked, but I already knew the answer wasn't rational. Nothing about this was rational. We backed away from the door. I could hear slithering sounds on the other side, getting louder. The doorknob began to turn. "Outside!" Sheriff Bradley shouted. We ran for the front door, but before we got there, it slammed shut on its own. The windows began rattling in their frames. And then I heard the sound of hundreds of snakes moving through the walls. "They're in the walls!" a deputy screamed. Snakes began pouring out of ventilation grates, squeezing through cracks in the floorboards, dropping from the ceiling. Within seconds, the church floor was writhing with them. An officer, named Harris, screamed as a copperhead bit his ankle. He went down hard, clutching his leg. 2 more snakes struck him before anyone could react. "Get him out!" I yelled, but more snakes were flooding in, blocking our path to every door. That's when I saw him. Pastor Jeremiah Stone. He was sitting upright in the front pew. I'd thought he was dead like the others, but now his eyes were open. His mouth was moving, but the voice that came out wasn't his. "She has the gift," the voice said, speaking through the pastor's corpse. "The immunity. We have been waiting for her." His jaw unhinged like a snake's, opening impossibly wide. A smaller snake emerged from his throat, then another, then dozens more. They poured out of his mouth and nose like living vomit, spilling onto the floor and joining the mass of serpents. "Doctor," Chen was screaming. Sheriff Bradley was firing his pistol at the snake pile, but bullets just passed through, hitting the wooden pews behind it. The shots didn't slow the snakes down at all. I grabbed Harris under the arms and dragged him toward a window. "Break the glass!" Deputy Martinez smashed the window with his baton, and we shoved Harris through, then followed. We tumbled out onto the grass, covered in cuts from the broken glass. Behind us, snakes were pouring out of the window like water. "The cars!" someone yelled. We ran. I heard more screaming behind me, but didn't look back. We piled into the nearest patrol car, and Sheriff Bradley floored it, spraying gravel as we tore down the dirt road away from the church. In the rearview mirror, I saw snakes covering the church building like a living blanket, and standing in the doorway, I saw that human-shaped mass of serpents watching us leave. We made it 3 miles before the car died. The engine just cut out, all the lights on the dashboard going dark at once. Sheriff Bradley tried to restart it, but got nothing, not even a clicking sound. "What the hell?" he muttered, turning the key again and again. I looked back toward the church. The road behind us was empty, but I could see movement in the trees on both sides. Slithering, crawling movement. "They're following us," I said. "That's impossible," Dr. Chen said, but her voice was shaking. "Snakes can't move that fast. They can't coordinate. This can't be real." Deputy Martinez was in the back seat, working on Harris. The man's ankle had swollen to twice its normal size, turning purple-black. He was unconscious, breathing in short, gasping breaths. "He needs a hospital," Martinez said. "Now." I pulled out my radio. Nothing but static. Tried my cell phone, no signal. We were 15 miles from town, surrounded by dense forest, with no way to call for help and a mass of snakes hunting us. We walk. Sheriff Bradley said, "Stay in the middle of the road, move fast, and watch for snakes." We got out of the car. Martinez carried Harris in a light fireman's carry. The sun was starting to sink toward the horizon, painting the sky orange and red. In another hour, it would be dark. We'd gone maybe half a mile when Dr. Chen grabbed my arm. "Listen," she whispered. At first I didn't hear anything. Then I did a rustling sound, like wind through dry leaves. But there was no wind. The air was perfectly still and heavy with humidity. The sound was coming from all around us. From the trees, the bushes, the undergrowth, we were surrounded. "Keep moving," I said. "Don't stop." A copperhead slithered across the road in front of us. Then another. Then 5 more. They weren't attacking, just crossing from one side to the other, completely ignoring us. No, not ignoring, hurting. "They're pushing us somewhere," I said. Sheriff Bradley pulled his gun. "Where?" Before I could answer, Deputy Martinez screamed. Harris had woken up and actually bitten him with his teeth, like an animal. Martinez dropped, Kim, and stumbled back, blood running down his arm. Harris hit the ground and immediately began convulsing. His back arched, and his mouth opened wide, wider than should be possible. I heard bones cracking as his jaw dislocated. "No," Dr. Chen whispered. "No, no, no." Small snakes began emerging from Harris's mouth. Baby ones, no bigger than earthworms, but dozens of them. His eyes had turned completely white, rolled back in his head, and more snakes were coming out of his tear ducts. The baby snakes hit the ground and immediately began moving toward us. "Run!" I screamed. We ran. Behind us, I heard Harris's body split open with a wet tearing sound, and hundreds more snakes spilled out. The man had been turned into an incubator. His body used to breed more of these things. We crashed through the underbrush, branches whipping at our faces. I had no idea where we were going, just away, anywhere, away from that nightmare behind us. Sheriff Bradley went down first. 1 second he was running beside me. The next he was on the ground, 3 rattlers coiled around his leg. He screamed and tried to kick them off, but more snakes were coming. "Doctor." Chen and I grabbed his arms and dragged him, but he was a big man, and the snakes were pulling him the other way. I used my snake hook to try to pry them off, but for every one I removed, 2 more took its place. "Leave me," he gasped. "Go." "No, doctor," Chen shouted, but I could see it was hopeless. There were too many, and they were too strong. A huge timber rattler struck Bradley in the neck. His eyes went wide, and he stopped fighting. The venom was fast, way faster than it should be. Within seconds, he was having a seizure. "We can't help him," I said, grabbing Dr. Chen's arm. "We have to go." We left him there. I can still hear his screams in my nightmares. Dr. Chen and I stumbled out of the forest and found ourselves on a ridge overlooking the valley. The church was visible below, and what I saw made my knees weak. The entire building was covered in snakes. They coated every surface, moving in patterns that looked almost like writing, and spreading out from the church in all directions were lines of snakes, hundreds of them, moving through the forest like the tentacles of some enormous creature. "What are they, doctor?" Chen asked. "I don't know," I said, "but I think they want me." She looked at me with fear in her eyes. "Why you?" "The immunity." That's what it said. "I've been bitten so many times I'm immune to most venoms now. My body can handle doses that would kill anyone else." "So what? Why does that matter?" I was starting to understand, and the realization made me sick. It needs a host. A human host. But a normal person would die from all those bites. It needs someone who can survive the venom long enough for whatever it's trying to do. A voice spoke from behind us. The same wet, rasping voice from the church. Clever. We spun around. The snake mass was there. 20 feet away, formed into the shape of a man. It was holding something. Sheriff Bradley's gun. "You cannot escape," it said. "We are legion, we are many, and we are hungry." The thing raised the gun and pointed it at Dr. Chen. "No." I lunged forward as it pulled the trigger. The bullet caught Dr. Chen in the shoulder, spinning her around. She went down hard, blood spreading across her shirt. I threw myself at the snake mass without thinking. My hands plunged into the writhing bodies, and immediately I felt bites, dozens of them, fangs sinking into my arms, my hands, my neck. The venom hit my system like fire. Even with my immunity, this much concentrated poison was overwhelming. My vision started to blur, and my muscles began to spasm. But I kept fighting. I grabbed snakes and threw them, stomped on them, crushed them with my boots. For every one I killed, 3 more took its place, but I didn't stop. The mass screamed an awful sound that came from hundreds of snake mouths at once. It fell apart, losing its human shape, and the snakes scattered into the undergrowth. I collapsed next to Dr. Chen. She was pale, shaking, going into shock from blood loss and the horror of it all. "Liz," she gasped. "You're covered in bites. How are you still moving?" "Immunity," I said through gritted teeth. My whole body felt like it was burning from the inside out, but I was alive. Barely. "Come on, we need to find shelter." I got her to her feet, and we stumbled through the woods. The sun was setting now, and shadows were getting long. We needed to find somewhere safe before dark. We found an old hunting cabin about a mile from the ridge. The door was locked, but I kicked it in. Inside was dusty and full of cobwebs, but it was shelter. I helped Dr. Chen inside and barricaded the door with furniture. "Tell me the truth," she said, slumped against the wall. "Are we going to die? Here?" I didn't answer right away. I was looking at my arms, at the dozens of bite marks oozing blood and clear fluid. My body was fighting the venom, but I could feel it losing. Much more of this, and even my immunity wouldn't save me. "I don't know," I finally said, "but I'm going to try to stop this thing." "How? You don't even know what it is." I pulled out a small notebook from my pocket. I always carried one for field notes. Inside were some papers I'd taken from the church before everything went to hell. Handwritten sermons by Pastor Stone. I read them by the last light coming through the window. Pastor Stone had believed he could summon the Holy Spirit into serpents, making them sacred vessels. He'd been breeding snakes for years, selecting the most venomous ones, creating a bloodline of divinely blessed serpents. He'd performed rituals, said prayers, handled the snakes and services to show his faith. But he hadn't summoned the Holy Spirit. He'd summoned something else. Something that had been waiting for centuries for someone to open the door. "It's a demon," I said. "Or something like it." Stone thought he was doing God's work, but he created a doorway for something evil. And it's been feeding on the congregation, growing stronger. "Why the snakes?" Dr. Chen asked. "They're perfect vessels. No individual will, just instinct and hunger, easy to control. And there are thousands of them in these mountains. If this thing gets strong enough, if it spreads beyond the church." I didn't finish the sentence. I didn't need to. We both understood. Outside, the sun finally set, and with the darkness came the sound of slithering. Hundreds of snakes surrounding the cabin. The voice spoke, muffled through the walls. "Elizabeth, join USSSS. Become the VSSSL. We will make you immortal. We will make you powerful. All we need is your flesh, your blood, your SSS soul." "Not a chance," I shouted back. Something heavy hit the door. Then again. The barricade shook but held. I looked around the cabin desperately. There had to be something I could use. Old furniture, dusty shelves, a wood stove in the corner, some rusted tools. Tools. I grabbed a pickaxe from the corner and smashed through the wall into what looked like a storage area. Inside were cans of gasoline for a generator, old propane tanks, and Jackpot, a tank of liquid nitrogen left by hunters who must have used it for freezing game. "Dr. Chen," I said, "I have an idea, a really stupid idea." She looked at the nitrogen tank. "Snakes are cold-blooded." "Exactly. Drop their body temperature fast enough, and they go dormant. Can't move, can't think. That thing isn't just snakes anymore." "I know. But maybe the cold will slow it down enough for me to do what I need to do." "Which is?" "Kill the mother snake. The big rattler in the box. I think it's the center, the anchor. If Stone was breeding these snakes for years, that old girl is probably the matriarch of the whole bloodline. Take her out. Maybe the connection breaks." The door was starting to crack. We were out of time. I grabbed the nitrogen tank and the pickaxe. When I open that door, run for the church. I'll hold them off. That's suicide. Probably. But I'm the only one who can survive enough bites to get close. You need to get to town. Warn people. Don't let this spread. Before she could argue, I kicked open the door. The snake mass was right there, bigger than before, easily 10 feet tall now. It lunged at me, and I opened the valve on the nitrogen tank, spraying the ultra-cold liquid directly at it. The effect was instant. Snakes froze mid-strike, their bodies going rigid. The mass collapsed in on itself, the snakes unable to coordinate. I didn't wait. I ran toward the church, spraying nitrogen in a wide arc, freezing snakes as they tried to strike. Behind me, I heard Dr. Chen running in the opposite direction. The church was dark when I reached it, but I knew the layout now. I crashed through the door and ran straight for the back room, the serpent sanctuary. The door burst open under my shoulder, and there it was, the wooden box, still sitting in the center of the room. I approached slowly. Most of the snakes were gone, probably out hunting with the main mass, but a few remained, coiled around the box like guards. I froze them with the nitrogen, then reached for the box's latch. The lid flew open on its own. The giant timber rattler rose up, and I saw intelligence in those eyes again. Not snake intelligence, something older, something that had been waiting a very long time. "You cannot kill me," it said, its voice clearer now. "I am eternal. I swung the pickaxe with everything I had. The blade went right through the snake's head, pinning it to the wooden box. It thrashed and coiled, but I kept the pressure on, driving the pickaxe deeper. The snake's body began to glow with a sickly green light. Its mouth opened impossibly wide, and something came out, not another snake, but pure darkness, like smoke made of shadows. The darkness screamed as it dissipated, and all around me, I heard hundreds of snakes screaming too. The sound was like nails on a chalkboard, making my teeth hurt and my vision blur. Then silence. I pulled the pickaxe out. The giant rattler was dead, truly dead. Its body was already starting to decompose, rotting away at an accelerated rate. I stumbled out of the church and collapsed on the grass outside. My body was shutting down from all the venom, the exertion, the terror of the last few hours. In the distance, I could hear sirens. Dr. Chen had made it. I closed my eyes and let the darkness take me. I woke up 3 days later in a hospital bed with tubes in my arms and machines beeping around me. Dr. Paul Hammond, a state wildlife biologist I'd worked with before, was sitting in a chair by the window. "Welcome back," he said quietly. "What happened?" My voice was rough, barely a whisper. "You killed it. Whatever it was, you killed it." When the emergency teams arrived at the church, they found thousands of dead snakes, just dead. All at once. "Dr. Chen? She'll be okay." Bullet went clean through. "She's down the hall, asking about you every hour." I tried to sit up, but immediately felt dizzy. "The bodies? The congregation?" "Removed. The church is being demolished as we speak. Officially, it's being labeled a biohazard site, some kind of toxic mold that caused mass hallucinations and attracted an unusual number of venomous snakes." "That's not what happened." "I know," Hammond said. "But it's what the report will say. People can't handle the truth sometimes." I spent 2 weeks in that hospital. They ran every test imaginable, trying to figure out how I'd survived so many bites. My immunity had saved me, but it had. I've been close, too close. The doctor said another few minutes, and my kidneys would have shut down. When I finally got out, I returned to my ranger station. But I couldn't do my job anymore. Every time I saw a snake, even a harmless garter snake, I'd have a panic attack. Me, the person who used to catch copperheads for fun. The Forest Service was understanding. They transferred me to visitor services, where I work now. I answer questions, give directions, help people plan safe hikes. I never go into the field anymore. But I still have nightmares. I still see that mass of snakes forming into human shapes, still hear that voice calling my name. 3 months after the incident, Hammond called me. He'd been investigating other snake-handling churches in Appalachia, just to be safe. "I found 2 more," he said. "Churches with similar practices, similar breeding programs, both abandoned in the last year. No signs of violence, just empty." like everyone got up and left. "Did you find the snakes?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. "No, that's what worries me. I think about that sometimes, late at night when I can't sleep, about those other churches, those other breeding programs, about how many divinely blessed serpents might be out there, waiting for the right moment to gather together, about how many other entities might be looking for a doorway into our world. I tell people now, respect nature, but don't worship it. Don't try to make the wild sacred. Don't try to use God's creatures as vessels for power, because something might answer, and it might not be what you hoped for." I still work in Jefferson National Forest. I'm still dedicated to protecting people from dangerous wildlife. But now I know that sometimes the most dangerous creatures aren't the ones you can see. They're the ones that hide inside other things, waiting for an invitation. The official report says it was toxic mold and an unusual snake. Migration. That's what the records will show forever. But I know the truth, and I watch. Always watching, because if it happened once, it can happen again. And next time, there might not be anyone immune enough to stop it. My name is Joe Kilpatrick, and I've been a ranger in the George Washington National Forest for 16 years. I've seen a lot in that time: poachers, drug operations, lost hikers, dead bodies. But I never thought I'd see ghosts. Real ones. The kind that can kill you. I grew up hearing stories about these mountains. My grandfather was Irish, and he loved telling tales about spirits and the old ways. But I never believed any of it. I became a ranger because I loved the outdoors and wanted to protect our history. The Shenandoah Valley is full of old sites, Civil War battlefields, Native American burial grounds, abandoned homesteads from the 1800s. My job was to keep people from destroying these places. I was good at my job. I knew every trail, every old logging road, every hidden valley in my section of the forest. I'd worked cases involving stolen artifacts, vandalism at historic sites, even a few murder investigations. I had a reputation for being thorough, professional, and completely skeptical of anything supernatural. That changed in April 1984. It started with a call from my supervisor. "Joe, we've got a situation. ATF is running an operation near Whiskey Hollow. They want a ranger liaison." Whiskey Hollow. I knew the place. It was a hidden valley about 12 miles from the nearest town, surrounded by steep ridges and accessible only by old logging roads. In the 1922, during Prohibition, it had been home to the McAllister family moonshiners who ran one of the biggest illegal operations in Virginia. "What kind of operation?" I asked. "Modern moonshine ring. Someone's running a pretty sophisticated distillery up there. ATF got a tip, and they're going in tomorrow. They just want you there to make sure they don't damage any historic sites." I agreed. But something felt wrong. The weather had been terrible that spring: constant thunderstorms, heavy flooding, roads washed out everywhere. Getting to Whiskey Hollow would be difficult, maybe impossible. The next morning, I met the ATF team at the ranger station. There were 5 of them, led by Agent Michael Torres, a serious guy in his 30s with dark eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. "Thanks for coming, Ranger," Torres said, shaking my hand. "We've been tracking this operation for 6 months. They're producing high-quality shine and distributing it across 3 states. We're going in at dawn tomorrow." "You know the history of that valley?" I asked. Torres nodded. "Moonshiners back in the 20s. Federal raid went bad. I read the file. It didn't just go bad," I said. "The McAllister family, grandfather, father, 2 sons, and the mother, they were all killed. The official report said they resisted arrest, but local stories say different. Say the family was surrendering when the federal agents opened fire." Torres's jaw tightened. "That was 60 years ago. Different time, different agents." "I know, just telling you the history." We drove up to Whiskey Hollow the next morning in a convoy of 4 vehicles. The roads were worse than I'd expected, muddy, rutted, with tree branches blocking the way. It took us 3 hours to travel 12 miles. When we finally reached the valley, I felt it immediately. Something was wrong with the air. It was too still, too quiet. No birds singing, no insects buzzing. Just silence. Torres noticed it too. Weird. he muttered. We hiked the last mile on foot, following an old trail that wound through dense forest. The ATF agents were tense, hands on their weapons, scanning the trees. I stayed behind them, trying to shake the feeling of being watched. Then I smelled it. Corn mash. The sharp, sweet smell of fermenting grain. Getting close, Torres whispered. But we weren't close to anything. I knew this area. There was nothing ahead except the ruins of the old McAllister homestead, just a collapsed chimney and some foundation stones. No still, no distillery, nothing. We reached the ruins 10 minutes later. The agents spread out, searching the area. I walked around the old foundation, looking at the stones that had once been someone's home. That's when Agent Torres shouted, "Over here! I found something!" We ran to where Torres was standing, at the edge of a small clearing. He was looking down at a piece of equipment, a modern copper still, the kind used for making moonshine. But it wasn't the still that made us all stop and stare. It was destroyed. Completely destroyed. The copper was torn apart, riddled with holes. Not from rust or age, from bullets. "What the hell?" one of the other agents said. I knelt down and examined the holes. They were large, ragged, the kind made by a shotgun at close range. But there was something else. The edges of the copper were old, corroded. These bullet holes weren't fresh. "Torres," I said slowly, "when did your team say this still was set up?" "Last month." "We have surveillance photos dated March 15th showing it intact. These bullet holes are old. Look at the corrosion. This damage is at least 40, maybe 50 years old." Torres stared at me. "That's impossible. This equipment was manufactured in 1983. I have the serial numbers." We stood there in silence, trying to make sense of it. Then Agent Sandra Kim, a woman in her late 20s, called out from near the tree line, "We've got more equipment here. And it's all destroyed the same way. We found 4 more stills, all modern, all destroyed by what looked like shotgun blasts from decades ago." The smell of corn mash was overwhelming now. Even though there was no mash, no active distilling operation. "Someone's trying to scare us off," Torres said, but his voice wasn't confident. "Setting up fake evidence." "With what?" I asked. 60-year-old bullets? That's when the radios died. All of them at once. Just static, then nothing. Torres tried his handheld, then the bullet back up. Dead. He looked at Kim. "Check the satellite phone." She pulled it from her pack, turned it on. Nothing. "Battery's full, but it's not working." "We're leaving," Torres said. "Something's not right here. We'll come back with more people. Better equipment." We started back down the trail. The sun was getting low, casting long shadows through the trees. The silence was even worse now, oppressive, like the forest itself was holding its breath. We were halfway back to the vehicles when we heard the first shot. It was loud, impossibly loud, echoing through the valley. An old sound, not the sharp crack of a modern rifle, but the deeper boom of an antique weapon. "Get down!" Torres yelled. We hit the ground. Another shot, then another. But there was no impact, no bullets hitting trees or dirt. Just the sound, rolling through the valley like thunder. "Where's it coming from?" Kim shouted. "I don't know. I can't see anyone." Then I saw them. Just for a second, through the trees. Figures. 4 of them. Men in old clothes overalls, work shirts, hats from another time. They were translucent, like looking through dirty glass. They were carrying shotguns. And they were walking toward us. "Torres," I said, my voice shaking, "do you see them?" He followed my gaze. His face went pale. "What the hell are those?" The figures came closer. I could see their faces now worn, angry, very much dead. One of them raised his shotgun and pointed it directly at Agent Torres. "Run!" I screamed. We ran. Behind us, more shots echoed through the valley. I could hear the agents shouting, cursing, their boots pounding on the trail. The figures didn't chase us. They just stood there, watching, as if they were waiting for something. We reached the vehicles at full sprint. Torres was fumbling with his keys when Agent David Walsh, the youngest member of the team, grabbed his arm. "Wait, where's Morrison?" We all stopped. Dr. James. Morrison was a consultant from the FBI, a historian who'd come along to document any historical findings. He'd been at the back of our group. "Morrison!" Torres shouted into the forest. James. No answer. We have to go back, Kim said. No, Torres said flatly. We get out, call for backup, come back with more people. We can't leave him. We don't even know what we're dealing with. We need. A scream cut through the air. High-pitched, full of terror. Morrison's voice. Then it stopped. We stood there, frozen, listening. The forest was silent again. Get in the vehicles, Torres said quietly. Now. We drove out of there fast, the trucks bouncing and sliding on the muddy roads. Nobody spoke. We were all thinking the same thing. What had we just seen? What happened to Morrison? My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. In 16 years, as a ranger, I'd never been scared like this. Not of bears, not of armed poachers, not of anything, because I knew what I'd seen, and it was impossible. We made it back to the ranger station just after dark. Torres immediately called his superiors, demanding backup and a full investigation team. I called my supervisor and told him we had a missing man and a potential. I didn't know what to call it. Supernatural situation? My supervisor said. Joe, are you feeling okay? I know how it sounds, but we all saw it, all 5 of us. Saw what, exactly? Ghosts. Men in old clothes, carrying shotguns. Translucent, not alive. There was a long silence on the phone. Joe, you've been working too hard. Get some rest. We'll search for Dr. Morrison in the morning. He hung up. I looked at Torres and the other agents sitting in my office. They all looked shell-shocked. Nobody believes us, Torres said. Would you? Kim asked. I barely believe it, and I saw it with my own eyes. We spent that night at the station, too afraid to go home. I pulled out all the historical files I had on Whiskey Hollow and the McAllister family. The raid had happened on April 23, 1924. 60 years ago, almost to the day, federal agents had surrounded the McAllister homestead at dawn, acting on a tip about the moonshine operation. According to the official report, the family had opened fire first, and the agents had returned fire in self-defense. But there were other documents, witness statements from neighbors, newspaper articles, even a letter from a local priest. They all told a different story. The McAllisters had come out with their hands up. The federal agents had been trigger-happy, maybe drunk themselves. They'd executed the entire family and burned the evidence. The grandfather, Thomas McAllister, had been shot first. Then his son, Robert. Robert's 2 boys, ages 16 and 19. And finally, Sarah McAllister, the mother, who'd been found hanging from a tree. The agents claimed she'd hung herself, but the rope marks suggested otherwise. 5 people, murdered by federal law enforcement, and it had been covered up. Jesus, Torres whispered, reading over my shoulder. No wonder they're angry. You think that's what this is? Kim asked. The McAllisters? Ghosts seeking revenge on federal agents? I think we need to go back, I said. We need to find Morrison, and we need to figure out what they want. Torres shook his head. We're not going back until we have serious backup. Military, maybe. Priests. I don't know. Something. But we didn't have a choice. The next morning, Agent Walsh didn't show up. We went to his motel room and found the door unlocked. Inside, the room was trashed, furniture overturned, walls scratched, the smell of corn mash everywhere. Walsh was in the bathroom, dead. He'd drowned in the bathtub. But here's the thing, the water he'd drowned in wasn't water. It was moonshine. Clear, high-proof alcohol that burned when we touched it. There was no way to explain it, no way to rationalize it. Walsh had drowned in a bathtub full of moonshine that shouldn't have existed. Kim started crying. Torres just stared at the body, his face blank. That's when my office phone rang. I answered it, my hand shaking. Ranger Kilpatrick? An old voice, scratchy and deep. You been reading about my family? Who is this? Thomas McAllister. You're standing on my land. You and them federal agents. I almost dropped the phone. You're dead. Damn right, I'm dead. Been dead 60 years, shot down like a dog by government men. And now, more government men come back, thinking they can do what they please on my land. We're not here to hurt anyone. We were just investigating, arresting, killing. It's all the same. You wear that badge, you're all the same. Mr. McAllister, please. We didn't know. We're sorry for what happened to your family. A long laugh, cold and bitter. Sorry, don't bring back my boys. Sorry, don't undo what they did to my Sarah. But maybe justice will. Maybe taking from you what was taken from us. What do you want? Same thing I wanted 60 years ago. A fair trial. A chance to tell our side. Let the truth be known. I can help with that. I can document what really happened. I can. Too late for documents, Ranger. We want justice. Real justice. Federal blood for federal crimes. The line went dead. I told Torres and Kim what McAllister had said. Torres immediately called his office again, demanding they shut down all ATF operations in the area and send crisis negotiators. But his superiors thought he was having a breakdown. They ordered him to take time off, get psychiatric evaluation. They think we're crazy, Torres said, slamming down the phone. Maybe we are, Kim said softly. That afternoon, we found Morrison, or what was left of him. He was in the forest, at the base of an old oak tree near Whiskey Hollow. He looked like he'd aged 50 years. His hair was white, his face wrinkled and sunken, his body withered. The medical examiner would later say he'd died of rapid aging, something that should have been impossible. But I knew what had happened. Sarah McAllister, the mother, had done to him what had been done to her, stolen his life. 3 federal agents were dead. Torres, Kim, and I were the only ones left. We knew we couldn't run. The McAllisters wouldn't let us. And we couldn't get help every time we tried to leave the area. Our vehicles would break down, or the roads would be blocked, or we'd find ourselves turned around and heading back toward Whiskey Hollow. They're not going to stop, I said. Not until they get what they want. A trial, Torres said bitterly. They want a trial for crimes committed 60 years ago by people who are probably dead themselves. They want acknowledgement, I said. They want someone to admit what was done to them was wrong. Kim looked at me. You're thinking of going back there. I have to. I'm the only one who can speak for the government now. I'm a federal employee, just like the agents who killed them. Joe, they'll kill you. Maybe. But if I don't try, they'll kill all of us. And probably every federal agent who comes into these mountains after us. That night, I hiked back to Whiskey Hollow alone. I carried no weapon, just a flashlight and the historical documents about the McAllister family. The forest was alive with whispers and shadows. I could feel them watching me, the ghosts of 5 murdered people, waiting to see what I would do. I reached the ruins of the homestead just after midnight. The moon was full, casting silver light across the valley. And standing in front of the old foundation stones were the McAllisters. Thomas, the grandfather, tall and stern. Robert, the father, with sad eyes. The 2 boys, teenagers frozen in death. And Sarah, the mother, her neck bruised and bent at an angle. You came, Thomas said. His voice was like wind through dead leaves. I came to make this right, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I can't bring you back. I can't punish the men who killed you, they're long dead. But I can give you what you asked for, a trial, a chance to tell your story. One man can't give us a trial. I can document what happened. I can file official reports. I can make sure the truth is recorded in federal archives. Your story will be part of the historical record. People will know what was done to you. Thomas stepped closer. The temperature dropped 20 degrees. Words, just more words. We want justice. You want revenge, I said, and I understand that. But killing federal agents now won't change what happened then. It just makes you murderers too. Sarah spoke for the first time, her voice soft and broken. They hung me, made it look like I'd done it to myself. But I didn't. I fought so hard. Tears were running down my face now. I know, I read the reports. I know what they did was wrong, evil, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Sorry, don't bring back my boys, Thomas said again. No, but maybe peace can, maybe rest can. If you let me tell your story, if you let the truth be known, maybe that's enough. Maybe that's the justice you deserve. For a long moment, nothing happened. The ghost stood there, watching me. Then Thomas raised his hand, and suddenly we weren't in the valley anymore. We were in a courtroom, an old one with wooden benches and gas lamps. The McAllister family sat on one side. I sat on the other, and in the judge's seat was Thomas McAllister himself. Court is in session, he said. The United States government stands accused of murder, false testimony, and cover-up. How do you plead? I stood up. Guilty, on all counts. What was done to your family was wrong. It was murder. The agents who did it should have been prosecuted. Instead, they were protected. The government failed you. Thomas leaned forward. And what punishment does the government deserve? The truth, I said, public acknowledgement, a formal apology, and a promise that we'll do better, that we'll hold ourselves accountable. That's all? Just words? Words have power. Words can heal, or they can hurt. The government used words to hide what happened to you. Let me use words to reveal it. Sarah stood up, her neck still bent. And you'll make them listen? You'll make them care? I'll try. I swear I'll try. It's all I can do. The courtroom flickered. For a moment, I could see the real valley through it, the ruins and the trees. Then it solidified again. Thomas McAllister stared at me for a long time. Then he nodded. This court accepts the plea. The defendant will document the truth of what happened on April 23rd, 1924. The defendant will seek formal acknowledgement from the federal government. If the defendant fails, this court will reconvene and the sentence will be death. The courtroom dissolved. I was back in the valley, on my knees in the mud. The ghosts were still there, but they were fading, becoming less solid. You have 1 year, Thomas said. Tell our story, Ranger, or we'll tell it ourselves, in blood. Then they were gone. I made it back to the ranger station at dawn. Torres and Kim were waiting for me, armed and terrified. You're alive, Kim said, hugging me. Barely, I said. But I made a deal. I have a year to get federal acknowledgement of what happened, or they come back. It took me 11 months. 11 months of writing reports, filing Freedom of Information requests, contacting historians and journalists. 11 months of being called crazy, of being told to drop it, of facing opposition from people who didn't want the government's dirty laundry aired. But I didn't stop. I couldn't. I'd made a promise to 5 ghosts who'd been wronged by the people I worked for. Finally, in March 1985, the Department of Justice issued a formal statement. It acknowledged that federal agents had used excessive force during the April 23, 1924 raid on the McAllister family. It acknowledged that the family had been attempting to surrender. It acknowledged that evidence had been falsified and that the agents responsible had never faced justice. It wasn't a trial, it wasn't prosecution, but it was acknowledgement. It was the truth in writing from the federal government. I took a copy of the statement back to Whiskey Hollow. I read it aloud at the ruins of the McAllister homestead, and I felt them there, listening. Thomas and Robert and the boys and Sarah. When I finished reading, the air felt lighter, warmer. The oppressive silence was gone. Birds were singing again. The valley felt peaceful. I never saw the McAllisters again, but I left that valley a different person. I became an advocate for historical justice, for reviewing old cases where the government might have acted wrongly. I helped uncover 3 other incidents in Appalachia where federal agents had committed crimes and covered them up. And I never stopped believing in ghosts, because I know they're real. I know the dead can hold grudges. I know that justice matters, even 60 years later. Torres left the ATF. Kim became a private investigator. We stay in touch, the 3 survivors of Whiskey Hollow. And sometimes, when we talk late at night, we wonder how many other places like that are out there. How many other families were wronged? How many other ghosts are waiting for someone to tell their story? The government makes mistakes. Sometimes those mistakes kill people. And sometimes, the dead don't stay buried. If you work for the government, if you wear a badge, remember the McAllisters. Remember that your actions have consequences that can last generations. Remember that the truth matters, even when it's painful. Because the ghosts are watching, and they're waiting to see if we've learned anything. My name is Joe Kilpatrick. I've been a ranger for 17 years now, and I know that some grudges last forever unless we have the courage to face them. My name is Rebecca Thornton, but everyone calls me Becky. I've been a ranger in the Chattahoochee National Forest for 14 years now, and I need to tell you about something that happened back in October 1993. Something that changed everything I thought I knew about the world. Before I get into it, you should know a bit about me. I'm 35 years old, former military police, and I've spent most of my adult life in these mountains. I can track a deer through rocky terrain in pitch darkness. I'm qualified with 7 different weapon systems. I've handled black bears, aggressive elk, even a few mountain lions over the years. Point is, I'm not someone who scares easily, and I'm definitely not someone who believes in fairy tales. Werewolves? Please, that's just medieval nonsense, right? Stories people made up to explain rabies or wolves that got too comfortable around humans. That's what I always thought, anyway. I work the Brasstown Bald area, which is about as remote as it gets in North Georgia. During the day, you might see a few hikers on the trails, but at night, it's just you. The trees, and whatever animals call these mountains home. The nearest town is 22 miles away, down winding mountain roads that take an hour to drive, even in good weather. I specialize in night operations and predator management. Basically, when there's a problem with wildlife after dark, they call me. It's not glamorous work, mostly tracking nuisance bears or dealing with coyotes that get too close to campgrounds. But I like it. There's something peaceful about the forest at night, when it's just you and the darkness and the sound of wind moving through the trees. October that year was beautiful. The leaves were turning, painting the mountains in shades of red and gold. We had a lot of campers come through, taking advantage of the cool weather before winter set in. Everything was normal, routine. Then the blood moon came. I'm not superstitious, but I had to admit it was eerie. A total lunar eclipse, turning the moon deep red, hanging low over the mountains like a bad omen. The Cherokee people who've lived in these mountains for thousands of years have stories about blood moons, stories about shapeshifters and curses, and things that hunt when the moon turns to blood. I'd heard these stories from Thomas Crow Dog, a tribal ranger I worked with sometimes. Good guy, knew these mountains better than anyone. But I always figured they were just stories, ways of explaining natural phenomena before people understood science. I should have listened closer. It started on October 28th, 3 days before Halloween. I was at the ranger station, finishing up paperwork, when the call came in. A family camping near the Arkansas Trail had reported seeing something they couldn't explain, a massive wolf, they said, but walking on 2 legs like a man. I sighed and grabbed my gear. People saw weird things in the woods all the time, especially at night. Shadows played tricks. Bears standing on their hind legs looked almost human. I figured it was something like that. Probably just a bear, I told Ranger Marcus Chen as I headed for the door. People always think bears are bigger than they are. In October? Marcus raised an eyebrow. Most bears are getting ready to den up. They're not usually aggressive this time of year. Well, I'll check it out. Probably nothing. I had no idea how wrong I was. The drive up to the Arkansas Trail took 40 minutes, winding up narrow mountain roads. By the time I arrived at the campsite, full darkness had settled over the forest. The blood moon hung overhead, casting everything in a weird reddish light that made the shadows look wrong somehow. The Morrison family was waiting by their tent, Father Dale, Mother Susan, and 2 kids, maybe 8 and 10 years old. The kids were crying, and Susan looked pale and shaky. Only Dale seemed relatively calm, though I could see tension in his shoulders. "Thanks for coming out," Dale said as I approached. "I know it sounds crazy, but..." "It's not crazy," Susan interrupted, her voice tight. "We saw it. All of us saw it." I pulled out my notepad. "Why don't you tell me exactly what you saw?" Dale glanced at his wife, then at his kids. "About an hour ago, we were sitting around the fire, roasting marshmallows. I heard something moving in the trees. Something big. I figured it was a deer or maybe a bear, so I grabbed my flashlight to scare it off." He paused, and I saw his hands trembling slightly. When I shined the light into the trees, there was something there. It looked like a wolf, but it was huge, maybe 9 feet tall, and it was standing upright like a person. Its eyes reflected the light, glowing red. Dad turned off the flashlight really fast, the older kid added, her voice small. But we could still see it in the moonlight. It just stood there, watching. "How long did it watch you?" I asked, keeping my tone professional and calm. "Maybe a minute," Susan said. "Then it dropped down on all 4s and ran off into the trees. But Ranger Thornton, I swear to God, when it ran, it looked like it was smiling. Like it knew it had scared us." I took down all the details, asked a few more questions, then told them I'd do a sweep of the area. Privately, I was thinking it had probably been a bear. Black bears could definitely look bigger than they were in the dark, and when they stood up, people sometimes interpreted it as walking on two legs. But as I moved away from the firelight and into the forest, something felt off. The woods were too quiet. No crickets, no rustling of small animals in the underbrush, no owl calls. Just silence, broken only by the sound of my boots on the trail and my own breathing. I'd been in these mountains long enough to know what that meant. When the forest goes silent like that, it's because something is wrong. Something has scared everything else into hiding. I clicked on my flashlight and swept it across the trees, looking for eyeshine. Nothing. I moved slowly, carefully, every sense on alert. The moon cast long shadows through the trees, and the reddish light made everything look strange and unfamiliar, even though I'd walked this area 100 times. That's when I found the tracks. I've tracked a lot of animals in my time. I know what bear tracks look like, what wolf tracks look like, what human footprints look like in soft dirt. What I was looking at didn't match any of those things. The tracks started as human footprints, bare human feet, large, maybe size 13 or 14. But about 20 yards into the tree line, they started to change. The toes elongated, became more claw-like. The heel stretched, the stride lengthened. By the time I'd followed them another 30 yards, they were definitely animal tracks. Wolf tracks, but bigger than any wolf I'd ever seen. I crouched down, shining my flashlight on the clearest print. My hand could fit inside it with room to spare. The claws had dug deep into the earth, suggesting something heavy, something powerful. This wasn't right. This wasn't any animal I knew. I pulled out my radio. "Marcus, you there?" Static, then his voice. "Yeah, Becky. What's going on? I need you to contact Thomas Crow Dog. Ask him if he can come out to the Arkaquah Trail tomorrow morning. I've got some tracks here I want him to look at." "What kind of tracks?" I hesitated. "I'm not sure. Just get Thomas out here, okay?" I spent another hour searching the area, following the tracks as they wound through the forest. They led up toward the rocky ridges above the trail, then disappeared into the rocks where I couldn't follow in the dark. The whole time, I had this crawling feeling on the back of my neck, like I was being watched. I finally headed back to the Morrison campsite. We didn't see anything, I told them, which was technically true. But I'd recommend you pack up and head to a different campground tonight, just to be safe. They didn't argue. They had their tent down and their car packed within 20 minutes. I waited until their tail lights disappeared down the mountain road before I got back in my truck. I should have left then. Should have called it a night and come back in the morning with Thomas and proper backup. But something made me stay. Maybe it was professional pride, maybe it was curiosity. Whatever it was, I decided to do one more sweep of the area. I grabbed my night vision goggles from my truck military surplus gear I'd kept from my MP days. The world turned green and grainy as I strapped them on. With night vision, I could see heat signatures, which meant I could spot any large animals long before they spotted me. Or so I thought. I moved back into the forest, following the tracks again. Through the night vision, I could see small heat signatures, mice, probably, or possums, but nothing large. Nothing that matched what the Morrisons had described. I was about half a mile from the campsite when I heard it, a howl. But not like any wolf howl I'd ever heard. This was deeper, more resonant, and there was something almost human about it. It raised every hair on the back of my neck and sent chills running down my spine. The howl came from somewhere up on the ridge, maybe a quarter-mile away. As I listened, another howl answered it. Then another, and another. 4 distinct voices, calling to each other across the dark mountains. Through my night vision, I suddenly saw movement, a heat signature, large, moving through the trees about 100 yards ahead of me. Then another, then 2 more. 4 figures, roughly man-sized but moving on all 4s, converging on something I couldn't see. I froze, my hand going to the pistol on my hip. Whatever these things were, they were hunting. Something, moving with coordination and intelligence, cutting off escape routes, working as a team. Then I heard the screaming, human screaming, high-pitched and terrified, coming from the same direction as the heat signatures. Someone else was out here. Someone was being hunted. Training took over. I started running toward the screams, pulling my pistol as I moved. "Park ranger!" I shouted. I'm coming! The screams cut off abruptly, replaced by horrible wet sounds that I recognized from my military days. The sound of tearing, the sound of something dying. I burst into a small clearing just in time to see the four figures scatter into the darkness. But not before I got a good look at one of them through my night vision. It was roughly the size and shape of a large wolf, but it moved wrong. Too fluid, too intelligent, and when it turned its head to look at me before disappearing into the trees, I saw something in its face that looked almost human, like someone was trapped behind those glowing eyes, looking out. In the center of the clearing lay what was left of Jake Perkins. I knew Jake. Local hunter, good guy, been coming to these mountains for 30 years. He knew better than to be out here alone at night. But here he was, or what remained of him. I won't describe what they did to him. Some things you can't unsee, and I don't want to put those images in your head. Let's just say it was savage and efficient, the work of something that knew exactly how to kill. I checked for a pulse, even though I knew it was pointless. Jake was gone, had been gone for probably less than a minute. If I'd been faster, if I'd run harder, maybe I could have saved him, but I also might have ended up dead right beside him. I backed away from the body, keeping my pistol up, sweeping the tree line. The night vision showed me nothing now. Whatever those things were, they were gone, but I could feel them out there, watching, waiting. I keyed my radio with shaking hands. Marcus, I need law enforcement and the coroner at the Arkansas Trail. We've got a fatality. Jake Perkins, he's been attacked. Attacked by what? I looked down at Jake's body, at the claw marks and the bite wounds, at the way he'd been torn apart by something with strength beyond any normal animal. I don't know, I said, but it's still out there. The next morning, Thomas Crow Dog stood in the clearing where Jake Perkins had died, studying the tracks in the dirt. He was in his 50s, with long gray hair tied back in a ponytail, and the kind of weathered face that comes from decades in the mountains. He moved slowly around the scene, occasionally crouching to look closer at something, his expression growing more and more troubled. You see it? He finally asked me. See what? The pattern. Look here. He pointed at the tracks. 4 of them, moving in coordination, cutting off escape routes. This is pack hunting, but not like wolves. This is tactical, like humans, like soldiers. I'd noticed the same thing during the night, but hearing Thomas say it made it real in a way I didn't like. What are we dealing with? Thomas stood up, brushing dirt from his hands. He looked out at the forest, his face grave. My grandmother told me stories when I was young. Stories about the blood moon and what walks during it. I always thought they were just stories, meant to keep children from wandering in the woods at night. Thomas, the Nalusa Falaya, he said quietly. The people who change. Your people call them werewolves, but that's not quite right. These are something older, tied to the land itself. Family bloodlines going back hundreds of years, carrying a curse that activates when the moon turns red. I wanted to laugh. Wanted to tell him he was crazy. But I'd seen those things moving through the forest. I'd seen the intelligence in their eyes. You're telling me werewolves are real. I'm telling you that some things exist, whether we believe in them or not. Thomas pointed at the tracks. These aren't wolf tracks, Becky. And they're not bear tracks. Look at the spacing, the depth. Whatever made these walks on 2 legs most of the time, but can drop to 4 when it needs to move fast. So what do? We close this area, get everyone out, and we hope they're satisfied with what they've already taken. But they weren't satisfied. That afternoon, we found the Morrison family. Dale and Susan had followed my advice and moved to a different campground, about 15 miles south. It should have been safe. It should have been far enough away. It wasn't. A hiker found them around 2 in the afternoon. Dale was still in his tent, throat torn out, defensive wounds on his arms showing he'd tried to fight back. Susan's body was discovered 200 yards away in the woods. The children were alive, physically unharmed, but they'd been left alive, deliberately. Left to be found, traumatized and screaming, covered in their parents' blood. The state police brought in Dr. Kevin Walsh, a wildlife biologist who specialized in predator attacks. Kevin was a good scientist, methodical and logical. He examined the bodies, took samples, measured the wounds. The bite radius is wrong, he told me that evening. as we stood outside the county morgue. Too wide for wolves, wrong pattern for bears. And there's something else. He pulled out his phone, showing me photos of the bite marks. Look at the tooth pattern. These aren't purely animal teeth. There's too much variation, too much complexity. It's like something between human and animal. What does that mean? Kevin shook his head, looking frustrated and confused. I don't know. I've never seen anything like it. I'm sending samples to the state lab, but Becky, whatever attacked those people, it's not in any wildlife database I know. That night, Kevin went back to the percent, site where the Morrisons had died. He wanted to set up trail cameras, try to catch images of whatever was doing this. He took tranquilizer darts rated for large predators, figuring if he could capture whatever it was, we could study it, understand it. They found his body the next morning. The trail cameras were smashed. The tranquilizer gun was bent in half, like something had grabbed it with inhuman strength and twisted it into scrap metal. Kevin himself had been dragged into a cave system about a mile from the campsite. I was part of the recovery team. We went into those caves with spotlights and weapons drawn, calling out Kevin's name, hoping somehow he was still alive. We found him in a deep chamber, far from any natural light. But he wasn't alone. Arranged around his body, carefully and deliberately, were the bones of at least a dozen other people. Old bones, yellowed with age, some of them decades old, skulls lined up on natural stone shelves, femurs stacked like firewood. This was a killing ground, a place where something had been hunting for years, maybe generations. And scratched into the stone wall above Kevin's body, as if done with a claw, were words. Family blood runs deep. Thomas arrived as we were bringing Kevin's body out of the cave. He took one look at the photos of the bone chamber and went pale. The Bartley family, he said quietly. I should have guessed. Who? Old mountain family. Been living up in these hills since before the Cherokee were forced out. They keep to themselves, don't come down to town except when they have to. There are stories about them, about things that happen during blood moons. Missing hikers, hunters who never come home. But nobody ever investigated because nobody wanted to believe. Where do they live? Thomas pulled out a map and pointed to an area about 10 miles from where we stood, high up in the mountains where no roads went. Up there, old homestead, been in their family for 200 years. Then that's where we're going. Becky, you can't just... 3 people are dead, Thomas. A 4th was murdered in the most horrible way I've ever seen. If this Bartley family knows something about what's happening, then we need to talk to them. Now. He looked at me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. If we're doing this, we do it my way. We go in daylight only. We bring iron weapons, not guns. Iron, and we bring protection. What kind of protection? The kind my grandmother taught me about. Sacred herbs, blessed water from the springs. Things that have power against the cursed ones. I didn't argue. At this point, I was willing to try anything. We assembled a team. Me, Thomas, 2 state police officers, and Mary Crow Dog Thomas's sister, and a tribal police officer who knew these mountains as well as he did. We waited for dawn, then started the long hike up to the Bartley homestead. The forest was wrong as we climbed. Too quiet again, and there was a smell in the air, something like rotten meat mixed with musk. The trees seemed to lean away from the path we were taking, as if they knew something we didn't. About 2 miles from the homestead, we found the warning signs. Dead animals hung from trees. Rabbits, squirrels, even a deer, all arranged in patterns that looked almost ritualistic. And scattered around them were human belongings, backpacks, hiking boots, a child's stuffed animal trophies taken from victims over the years. Mary Crow Dog stopped, staring at one of the backpacks. I know this, she said quietly. This belonged to Sarah Mitchell. She disappeared 5 years ago, just before a blood moon. How many? I asked. How many people have they killed? Thomas was studying the ground, his face grim. Dozens, probably, maybe more. They've been doing this for generations, Becky. Feeding on anyone who comes into their territory during the blood moon cycles. We pushed forward, weapons ready, every sense on high alert. The Bartley homestead appeared through the trees like something out of a nightmare, a cluster of old log buildings, rotting and falling apart, surrounded by bones, animal bones, mostly. But here and there I could see human skulls mounted on stakes, marking the boundary of their territory. Anyone home? I called out, my voice echoing across the clearing. For a moment, nothing. Then a door creaked open on the largest building, and a man stepped out. He was huge, maybe 6'5", broad-shouldered and thick with muscle. His hair was long and wild, and his eyes had a yellowish tint that wasn't quite human. He looked at us without fear, without surprise, as if he'd been expecting us. "You shouldn't have come here," he said. His voice was rough, like he wasn't used to speaking. "This is Bartley land. We don't bother town folk. You don't bother us." "3 people are dead," I said, keeping my gun trained on him. 4, counting. The wildlife biologist. "You want to explain that?" The man I would learn later, his name was Thomas Bartley. No relation to Thomas Crow. Dog smiled, and his teeth looked too sharp. "Too many. Blood moon makes us hungry. Makes us change. We try to control it, but the hunger is strong." "You're saying you killed those people?" "I'm saying my family did. The curse takes us during the blood moon, makes us into hunters. We can't stop it. Been this way for 200 years, since my great-great-grandfather killed a Cherokee medicine woman and she cursed his bloodline with her dying breath." "Then you're all under arrest," one of the state police officers said, stepping forward. Thomas Bartley laughed, and it sounded like gravel grinding together. "You can't arrest us, officer. You can't even hold us. When the moon rises tonight, we'll change again, and this time, we'll come for you. For all of you." That's when Mary Crow Dog stepped forward, holding something in her hands, a bundle of herbs and what looked like a small leather pouch. She started chanting in Cherokee, words I didn't understand, her voice strong and clear. Thomas Bartley's smile disappeared. "Stop that," he growled. "You have no right." "I have every right," Mary said, still chanting. "You've killed my people, murdered innocents, violated every law of nature and spirit. I call on the old powers to end your curse, to break the chains that bind your family to darkness." Bartley roared and started toward her. And that's when things went to hell. More people came out of the buildings, 8, 9, 10 of them, all with that same yellowish tint to their eyes, all moving with that too fluid grace I'd seen in the creatures the night Jake Perkins died. "The family," Thomas Crow Dog whispered. "The whole cursed family." They were changing as they came toward us. Not fully, not yet, the sun was still up, but enough that I could see their faces elongating, their hands becoming more claw-like, their bodies growing larger and more bestial. "Run!" I shouted. We ran. We didn't make it far before they caught up. The Bartley family moved through the forest like they were part of it, leaping over fallen logs, weaving between trees, closing the distance no matter how fast we ran. I could hear them behind us, snarling and howling, their voices becoming less human with every passing second. The sun was setting. The blood moon would rise soon. Mary Crow Dog fell first. She'd been bringing up the rear, still chanting her protection ritual, trying to hold them back with ancient words and sacred herbs. I heard her scream, heard the horrible sounds that followed, and I knew she was gone. "Keep moving," Thomas Crow Dog shouted, tears streaming down his face but his legs still pumping. "If we stop, we all die." The 2 state police officers tried to make a stand, creating a choke point between 2 large boulders, firing their guns at the prize remark, pursuing pack. I saw one of the Bartley family go down, a bullet wound in its shoulder, but it got back up seconds later, the wound already closing. They healed fast, impossibly fast. The officers lasted maybe 30 seconds before they were overwhelmed. Their screams followed us as we fled deeper into the forest, Thomas and I the only ones left. We ran until my lungs burned and my legs felt like rubber, until I couldn't hear the sounds of pursuit anymore. Finally, we collapsed behind a fallen tree, gasping for breath, trying to stay quiet. "We can't outrun them," I said between breaths. "Not when the moon rises. They'll be too strong, too fast." "I know," Thomas said. He reached into his pack and pulled out several items. A leather pouch filled with herbs. A bottle of what he said was sacred spring water from Cherokee holy ground. And an old knife with an iron blade. "There's another way. The curse can be broken, but only by the alpha of the family. He has to choose to end it, has to sacrifice himself willingly. And you think they're just going to do that? No, but we have to try." He handed me the bottle of spring water. "This will hurt them, slow them down, and this," he gave me the iron knife, "can kill them, but only if you can get to the heart or take off the head. Iron disrupts the curse magic. What about you? I'm going to try to reach Thomas Bartley. When I looked in his eyes, I saw something. Sadness, regret. I think part of him wants to end this, to free his family from the curse. If I can convince him, if I can get through to that part of him, maybe he'll help us. And if you can't? Thomas smiled grimly. Then use the knife, and run like hell. The moon began to rise, red and massive over the mountain peaks. I could hear howling in the distance, getting closer. They were coming. Thomas Bartley emerged from the trees first, but he was barely recognizable now. 9 feet tall, covered in thick fur, with a wolf's head and human eyes. His pack followed him, 9 more of them, all transformed, all radiating power and hunger. They surrounded us, cutting off any escape. I raised the iron knife, knowing it wouldn't be enough, knowing we were going to die here. Thomas Bartley. Thomas Crow Dog called out, his voice steady, despite the terror I knew he must be feeling. I know you can hear me. I know you remember who you were before the curse took you. The massive werewolf tilted its head, and I saw recognition in those yellow eyes. You don't have to keep doing this, Thomas continued. You don't have to keep killing. The curse can be broken. You can free your family. But you have to choose it. You have to be willing to sacrifice yourself for them. The creature that had been Thomas Bartley made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. When it spoke, its voice was distorted by the wolf shape of its mouth, but the words were clear. Die for them? I've been dying for 200 years. Watching this curse destroy everyone I love. Watching us become monsters month after month. You think I want this? Then end it, Thomas said. You're the alpha. You have the power. If I die, the pack dies with me. They're my family. They're already dead, I said, surprising myself by speaking up. They're trapped in this curse, forced to kill, unable to live like normal people. You're not protecting them. You're condemning them. Thomas Bartley stared at me with those terrible yellow eyes. Around us, the other werewolves began to pace, agitated, hungry. The blood moon's power was reaching its peak. Soon they wouldn't be able to hold back, curse or no curse. Please, Thomas Crow Dog said softly. I know about my sister, Mary Crow Dog. You killed her today. But you know what her last words were? She was asking the old spirits to free you, to give you peace. She died trying to save you from yourselves. Something in Thomas Bartley's eyes broke. He threw back his massive head and howled, but it wasn't a hunting cry. It was the sound of 200 years of pain and grief and rage finally being released. The other werewolves stopped pacing, turned to look at their alpha, confused and uncertain. I'm sorry, Thomas Bartley said, his voice thick with emotion. For all of it. For everyone we killed. For every life we destroyed. I thought I was protecting my family, but all I did was make them into monsters. He looked at his pack, his family, and I saw love in that inhuman face. Love and devastating sadness. It ends tonight, he said. Then he lunged at me. For a second, I thought he'd changed his mind, thought he was going to tear me apart. But at the last moment, he veered to the side, grabbed the iron knife from my hand, and drove it into his own chest. The effect was instantaneous. Thomas Bartley's massive form shuddered, then began to shrink. The fur receded, the claws retracted, the wolf features melted. Away. Within seconds, he was human again, a large man with sad eyes and blood pouring from the wound in his chest. Around us, the other werewolves were transforming too, screaming as the curse released them, their bodies returning to human form. Some of them looked relieved. Others looked lost, like they didn't know who they were without the beast inside them. Thomas Bartley looked up at me and Thomas Crow Dog. Tell people. Tell them we're sorry. Tell them it's over. Then he died, the iron knife still buried in his heart. The Bartley family members collapsed around us, some crying, some just staring in shock at their human hands. The curse was broken. They were free. But the cost had been terrible. The official story was that the deaths in Chattahoochee National Forest were caused by a pack of escaped exotic animals, wolf-dog hybrids, from an illegal breeding operation. The animals were said to have been destroyed, and the area was temporarily closed for cleanup and safety inspections. Nobody questioned it. People don't want to believe in monsters. They want simple explanations. comfortable lies that let them sleep at night. The surviving members of the Bartley family were relocated, given new identities, new lives far from these mountains. I checked on them sometimes over the years. Some managed to rebuild, to find something like normal lives. Others couldn't handle the guilt of what they'd done while cursed, couldn't live with the memories. 3 of them took their own lives within the first year. Thomas Crow Dog retired from the Ranger Service 6 months after that night. The loss of his sister broke something in him. Last I heard, he was living in Oklahoma, teaching Cherokee language and traditions to children who'd never seen these mountains. I stayed. Someone had to. Someone had to remember what really happened, what's really out there in the wilderness. Because the Bartley family wasn't the only one carrying a curse. I started researching, digging through old records and folklore, talking to people who knew the old stories. I found at least 6 other families in the Appalachian Mountains with histories similar to the Bartleys, gaps in documentation during blood moon cycles, unexplained deaths and disappearances, warning signs that nobody wanted to see. I developed a specialty in what I privately called supernatural predator management. During blood moon cycles now, I coordinate closures of remote areas. I watch for warning signs. I investigate attacks that don't match normal animal behavior. Sometimes I find nothing but regular wildlife. Sometimes I find things that shouldn't exist. 3 years ago, I tracked what I'm pretty sure was a werewolf pack in the Nantahala National Forest. 2 years ago, I documented a series of attacks near the Tennessee border that matched the Bartley pattern. Each time, I did what I could to protect people, to contain the situation, to prevent it from becoming public knowledge. Because that's the thing about curses, they don't all end with a hero's sacrifice. Some of them just keep going, passed down through bloodlines, activated by blood moons and ancient wrongs, turning people into monsters, whether they want to be or not. I'm 49 years old now. I've been doing this work for 16 years, since that October night in 1993. I've seen things that would make you question reality. I've learned that the world is stranger and darker than most people can imagine. And I've learned that some family curses are real, running deep in the blood, waiting for the right conditions to wake up. So here's my advice. If you're ever hiking in the southern Appalachians during a blood moon, stay out of the deep woods. Don't camp alone. If you hear howling that sounds almost human, get to your car and leave immediately. And if you see something walking on 2 legs that shouldn't be, something with yellow eyes and too many teeth, don't try to take a picture. Don't try to be brave, just run. Because in these mountains, the old curses still have power. The monsters are still real. And they're still hungry. My name is Rebecca Thornton. I'm a park ranger, and I know what walks in the woods when the moon turns red. You should too. My name is Thomas McBride, but everyone just calls me Tom. I've been a forest ranger for 19 years now, working the Spruce Knob area of Monongahela National Forest in West Virginia. Most days, my job is pretty straightforward, checking trail conditions, preventing forest fires, making sure hikers don't do anything stupid. But before I became a ranger, I spent 12 years working underground in the coal mines. My daddy did the same for 30 years before a methane explosion took him when I was 17. I left mining the day after his funeral. Couldn't stand the dark anymore. Couldn't handle the weight of all that rock pressing down. Being a ranger let me stay outside, stay in the light, stay useful. I thought I'd left the underground behind for good. I was wrong. This happened in January of 1976, during one of the worst winters West Virginia had seen in decades. Snow came down so heavy it bent pine trees double and closed most of the mountain roads. The old Blackwood mine, about 30 miles from the nearest town, had been abandoned for 15 years. An underground coal seam fire had started back in 1961, some idiot cigarette, probably, and the whole operation shut down. The town nearby evacuated when toxic gases started venting through basement floors. By the time I got involved, that fire had been burning underground for a decade and a half. The ground above the old tunnels smoked like a chimney on cold mornings. Snow would melt in weird patterns, showing where the heat rose up from below. Geologists said the fire might burn for another 100 years, maybe more. Coal seams can smolder for centuries once they get going. I'd driven past the area plenty of times on patrol. never gave it much thought. A mine fire is just chemistry, carbon burning in the presence of oxygen. Nothing supernatural about it. Nothing that could hurt you if you stayed away from the gas vents and unstable ground. That's what I thought anyway. The trouble started on a Tuesday morning. I was in the ranger station, filling out paperwork and drinking bad coffee, when the phone rang. It was Sheriff Martinez from the county seat. "Tom, we got a problem," he said. His voice sounded tight. "You know anything about that geological survey team that was studying the Blackwood fire?" "Can't say I do." "When did they go out there?" 3 days ago. 4 scientists from the state university studying underground fire behavior. They were supposed to check in every 12 hours. We haven't heard from them in 36. My stomach dropped. 36 hours in winter conditions near a toxic mine fire. That wasn't good. "Road conditions?" I asked. "Avalanche came down 2 nights ago, blocked the access road completely. We're getting equipment in to clear it, but that's another day at least. I need you to ski in, see if you can find them." I didn't like it. The area around Blackwood Mine wasn't safe, even in good conditions. Sinkholes could open up without warning when underground tunnels collapsed. Toxic gases, carbon monoxide, sulfur dioxide, methane could accumulate in low spots. The heat from below made the ground unstable, but 4 people were missing. Maybe injured, maybe trapped, maybe just stranded with a broken radio. I had mine rescue certification from my coal mining days. If anyone was going to help them, it was me. "I'll head out within the hour," I said. The ski-in took 3 hours through heavy snow. The forest was dead quiet, the way it gets in deep winter. No birds singing, no wind in the trees. Just the whisper of my skis cutting through powder and my own breathing. The temperature was maybe 15 degrees, cold enough that my breath froze on my beard. I smelled the mine before I saw it. Even in the freezing air, the stink of sulfur was strong, like rotten eggs mixed with coal dust. As I got closer, I started seeing the smoke, thin white plumes rising from cracks in the pana, snow-covered ground. The snow had melted in large patches, exposing bare earth that steamed in the cold. The survey team's camp was set up in a clearing about 200 yards from the old mine entrance. 2 tents, an equipment trailer, a truck. Everything looked intact at first glance. No signs of struggle, no damage from weather or animals. But something felt wrong. I've spent enough time in the wilderness to trust my gut, and my gut was screaming at me. The silence was too complete. Even with snow-dampening sound, I should have heard something. Birds, wind, the creak of tree branches. Instead, there was nothing but that thin whistle of venting gas somewhere in the distance. "Hello?" I called out. "Forest Service. Anyone here?" No response. I approached the first tent slowly, pulling off my ski gloves. My hand went to the knife on my belt, not because I expected trouble, but because it felt right. The tent flap was tied shut from the outside. I loosened the knot and pulled it open. Empty. 2 sleeping bags, personal belongings, camp stove, everything neat and organized. Nobody home. The second tent was the same. More sleeping bags, more gear, a laptop computer sitting on a folding table. The laptop was off, cold to the touch. A clipboard sat next to it with survey notes written in neat handwriting. The last entry was dated 3 days ago. Subsurface temperatures exceeding predictions. Recommending expanded monitoring grid. I checked the equipment trailer next. It was locked, but the padlock had been left hanging open on the hasp. Inside were sensors, cables, testing equipment, sample containers, everything expensive, everything valuable. If the team had left voluntarily, they wouldn't have abandoned this stuff. The truck was locked, keys missing. I looked through the windows and saw nothing unusual. Coffee cups in the holders, maps on the dashboard, someone's jacket on the back seat. 4 people, vanished, all their equipment, left behind. I pulled out my radio and tried to raise the sheriff. Static. I tried the ranger station, more static. The mine fire must have been interfering with signals, all that heat and electromagnetic interference from the burning coal. I was on my own. That's when I noticed the tracks. Boot prints led away from the camp, heading toward the old mine entrance. 4 sets, different sizes. They walked in single file through the snow, following what looked like a thermal vent, a line where the ground was warm enough to melt the snow down to bare rock. I followed them, The tracks led right up to the mine entrance, which was supposed to be sealed. The state had welded iron bars across the opening back in the 60s, trying to control airflow and starve the fire. But the bars had been torn aside. Not cut, not unbolted. Torn. The metal was twisted like taffy, the ends glowing faintly red in the dim winter light. The metal was still hot. I held my hand near it and felt warmth radiating off the twisted iron. Nobody had touched those bars, not with tools anyway. The way they were bent, pulled apart from the inside, required force that shouldn't have been possible. Hydraulic equipment maybe, or explosives. But there was no equipment here, no blast marks. Just twisted metal cooling in the January air. The boot prints disappeared into the darkness beyond the bars. I stood there for a long moment, staring into that black hole. Every instinct from my mining days screamed at me not to go in. Never enter a burning mine. Never go underground alone. Never trust that the air is safe. But 4 people were in there. Maybe hurt, maybe trapped, maybe worse. I clicked on my flashlight and squeezed through the gap in the bars. The metal was warm enough that I felt it through my jacket. Inside, the air was thick and hot. I started sweating immediately. The tunnel sloped downward, following the old coal seam. The walls were black with soot, the ceiling low enough that I had to duck in places. My light bounced off support timbers that were charred and crumbling. The ground beneath my boots was warm, not hot enough to burn through the soles, but warm enough to be deeply wrong. I was walking on top of a fire that had been burning for 15 years. Somewhere below me, probably not that far below, coal was smoldering at temperatures high enough to melt rock. The boot prints continued down the tunnel. I followed them, watching my step, testing the air with each breath. Carbon monoxide is odorless, but I'd know if I started breathing it. Headache, dizziness, nausea. So far, I felt okay. Hot, nervous, but okay. The tunnel branched. The tracks went left, so I went left. 50 yards further. Another branch. The tracks went right. I was getting deeper into the mine system, further from daylight and fresh air. The heat was building. Sweat ran down my back, soaked through my shirt. Then I saw the first impossible thing. On the tunnel wall, about chest height, someone had carved words into the coal. No, not carved, melted. The letters were burned into the rock, edges glowing faintly orange. Turn back. The letters were fresh, still warm. I reached out to touch them and jerked my hand back. The rock was hot enough to blister skin. Something had written this message recently. Something with enough heat to melt coal. Something that wanted me to leave. I should have listened. Instead, I kept walking. The tunnel opened into a larger chamber, one of the old workrooms where miners used to extract coal. My flashlight beam swept across the space, and I froze. Dr. Amanda Price sat against the far wall. I recognized her from the photo on her university ID, which I'd seen clipped to her tent. 40 years old, dark hair, glasses. The photo showed her smiling at the camera. The woman against the wall wasn't smiling. She was dead. That was obvious. But the way she died, her body was burned, but not in any way that made sense. Her clothes were intact. Her hair was untouched. But her skin was charred black, like she'd been cooked from the inside out. Her mouth hung open in a scream. Her eyes were gone, just empty sockets filled with what looked like melted glass. No, not glass. Her eyes had melted. I've seen burn victims before. Mining accidents, house fires, forest fires. I know what fire does to human flesh. This was different. This was wrong. The temperature in that chamber had to have been above 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit to do this kind of damage. But her clothes should have burned first. The wooden support timbers in the chamber should have ignited. Hell, I should have been burning. But I wasn't. The chamber was hot, yes, but not that hot. Maybe 90, 100 degrees. Uncomfortable, but not deadly. Whatever killed Dr. Price, it wasn't the mine fire. I made myself approach her body. Had to check for identification, had to. Be sure. As I got closer, I saw more details that didn't make sense. The coal wall behind her was melted, dripping down in frozen waves like candle wax. Her body had been pressed into that molten rock before it cooled. She was fused to the wall. My hands shook as I checked her jacket pocket. Found her wallet, her ID, confirmed what I already knew. Dr. Amanda Price, age 43, PhD in geology. She'd come here to study underground fires. The fire had studied her instead. I backed away slowly, keeping my light on the body. Couldn't shake the feeling that if I looked away, something would change. Some detail would shift. That's when I heard the sound. It came from deeper in the mine, a rumbling like rocks shifting, or like something large moving through stone. The tunnel floor vibrated under my feet. Then I heard breathing. Not mine, something else, something big. Each breath was a wet, rattling sound, like air moving through a furnace. And with each breath, the dull nunner temperature in the chamber spiked. One moment it was 100 degrees. The next it felt like 120. Heat washed over me in waves. The breathing got closer. I ran. My flashlight beam bounced crazily as I sprinted back the way I'd come. Behind me, that breathing sound grew louder, faster. The tunnel walls started to glow with a dull red light. Not my imagination, the rock was actually glowing, heating up so fast I could see it change. I hit the tunnel branch, remembered to go left, kept running. My lungs burned from the hot air. Sweat poured off me. The temperature had to be over 150 degrees now, maybe higher. Much hotter, and I'd start cooking alive. The breathing was right behind me. I could feel it, a presence, huge and furious, chasing me through the dark. The walls glowed brighter. Orange, red, yellow in some spots. 20 yards from the entrance, 10 yards, 5. I dove through the twisted bars and rolled into the snow outside. Behind me, the entire mine entrance flared with light, like someone had opened a blast furnace door. Heat blasted out, so intense it melted the snow for 50 feet in every direction. Then, darkness. Silence. Just me, lying in wet snow, gasping for air that didn't burn, staring at the black hole that had almost killed me. Something lived in that mine. Something that shouldn't exist. And 3 people were still down there with it. I made it back to the survey camp before my hands stopped shaking. The rational part of my brain tried to explain what I'd seen. Methane pocket. Thermal expansion. Hallucination from carbon monoxide poisoning. But I knew better. I'd spent 12 years underground. I knew what mine gases did to people. I knew what fire looked like, what heat felt like. What I'd encountered in that mine was something else entirely. Dr. Price's body haunted me, burned from the inside, while her clothes stayed intact. Eyes melted while her hair remained, untouched. The precision of it was wrong. Fire doesn't work that way. Fire consumes everything or nothing. It doesn't pick and choose. I tried the radio again, still nothing but static. The sky was getting dark, maybe 3 hours until sunset. In winter, this far north, that meant about 15 hours of darkness. 15 hours alone in the dark with whatever was in that mine. I needed help. I needed equipment. I needed someone to tell me I wasn't losing my mind. But the access road was blocked. Even if I started skiing out now, I wouldn't reach the ranger station until tomorrow afternoon. And by then, the other 3 might be dead. If they weren't already. I sat in one of the tents, trying to think. The laptop was there, still cold. I opened it, hoping for battery power. The screen flickered on 20% charge remaining. Dr. Price's login screen showed a photo of her with 2 kids, both smiling. Her daughters, probably. Who didn't have a mother anymore. I shouldn't have, but I looked through her files. Needed to understand what they'd found, what they'd been studying. Maybe it would explain something. Her research notes were technical, full of geological terms I barely understood. But one folder caught my attention. Anomalous readings. I opened it. The first document was a temperature map of the area around the mine. Normal mine fires burn at around 1,500 degrees Fahrenheit. Hot, but predictable. The readings Dr. Price had recorded went up to 3,200 degrees in some spots. That was steel melting temperature. That was volcano temperature. But it got worse. The readings weren't constant. They spiked. The sensors had recorded sudden temperature jumps from 1,500 to 3,200 inches less than 30 seconds, then back down to normal. Happening at random times, random locations throughout the mine system. Dr. Price had written a note, impossible thermal signatures. No geological process explains this variability. Recommend immediate investigation of alternative heat sources. Alternative heat sources. She'd known something was wrong. The next file was a chemical analysis of the air venting from the mine. Carbon monoxide, check. Methane, check. Sulfur compounds, check. But there was something else, an element the analysis couldn't identify. The software had flagged it as unknown compound, with a note that the molecular structure didn't match anything in its database. The last file was just a video. Timestamp showed it was recorded 3 days ago, the night before the team disappeared. I clicked play. Dr. Price's face filled the screen. She looked tired, worried. Behind her, I could see the inside of the equipment trailer. Recording supplemental notes, she said. Date is January 13th, approximately 11 p.m. Team members are asleep. I'm documenting this separately because... She paused, choosing words carefully. Because I'm not sure they'll believe me. She held up a sensor. We've been recording seismic activity around the mine. Standard procedure for underground fires. Usually, you get small tremors from tunnel collapses, thermal expansion, that sort of thing. But tonight, the seismographs picked up something different. She pulled up a graph on a laptop behind her. The video quality was bad, but I could see the readout. Regular pulses, evenly spaced, like a heartbeat. This pattern has been running for 6 hours. Dr. Price continued. It's too regular to be geological activity. It's too strong to be equipment vibration, and it's getting stronger. She zoomed in on the graph. If I didn't know better, I'd say something is breathing down there. Something big. The pattern matches respiratory rhythm, one breath every 20 seconds, getting faster as time goes on. And every time it exhales, the temperature spikes. She looked directly at the camera. I've studied underground fires for 15 years. I've never seen anything like this. Tomorrow, we're going into the mine to investigate. If this recording is found and where something happens to us... She stopped, started again. There's something alive in that fire. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's an organism adapted to extreme heat or something else entirely. But it's there, and it's growing stronger. The video ended. I sat there staring at the blank screen. Dr. Price had known. She'd known there was something in the mine, and she'd gone in anyway. Scientific curiosity, professional duty. Maybe she thought she could study it, understand it. She'd been wrong. A sound outside made me look up. Something moving through the snow. Heavy footsteps, crunching closer. I grabbed my flashlight and stood up, heart pounding. It was full dark now, the only light coming from my flashlight and the faint glow of thermal vents in the distance. "Hello?" I called. A figure stumbled into the camp. A man, wearing the remains of a survey team, the jacket. His face was streaked with soot. His eyes were wide, terrified. "Help me," he whispered. "Please, God, help me." I recognized him from the team roster. Mark Stevens, geologist, age 31. He collapsed into my arms. He was burning hot, not feverish hot, like metal left in the sun. I could feel the heat through his jacket. My hands blistered where I touched him. "Mark," I said, easing him down. "What happened? Where are the others?" "It took them," he gasped. "Down deep. It took them and..." He screamed suddenly, arching his back. Smoke started rising from his clothes. No, not from his clothes. From his skin. I watched in horror as Mark Stevens began to burn from the inside out. Just like Dr. Price, his eyes went wide, then wider. His mouth opened in a soundless scream. Smoke poured from his mouth, his nose, his ears. The temperature around him spiked. Snow melted in a 10-foot circle. I stumbled backward, shielding my face from the heat. In 30 seconds, it was over. Mark Stevens was dead, his body charred black, his clothes somehow still intact. The smell of burning flesh filled the air. I threw up in the snow. When I could breathe again, I grabbed the satellite phone from the equipment trailer. My hands shook so badly I could barely dial. The phone chirped, searching for signal. Come on, it connected. 1 bar, miracle. "Sheriff Martinez," the voice answered. "It's Tom McBride," I said. My voice didn't sound like my own. "I'm at the Blackwood mine. I need emergency response, now, multiple fatalities. And I stopped. What did I need? I need someone who knows about mine fires. An expert. The best you can find." "Tom, slow down. What happened?" I can't explain over the phone. Just get me help. As fast as possible. I looked at Mark Stevens' body cooling in the snow. And tell them to bring fire suppression equipment. A lot of it. Copy that. How many casualties? 2. Confirmed dead. 2 still missing in the mine. Are you safe? I looked at the mine entrance, still glowing faintly in the darkness. No, I'm not. But I'm the only one here. I have to. The ground shook, not a small tremor, a real earthquake, strong enough to knock me off my feet. The satellite phone flew from my hand, disappearing into the snow. The shaking lasted 10 seconds. When it stopped, I could hear something new. A roaring sound, like a wind tunnel, coming from the mine. Then I saw it. Something emerged from the mine entrance. At first, I thought it was smoke, a column of black smoke rising into the night sky. But smoke doesn't move with purpose. Smoke doesn't have a shape. This thing was 12 feet tall, vaguely human in form, but made entirely of burning coal and sulfurous smoke. Its eyes were pits of white-hot fire. Its mouth was a furnace. With each step, the ground beneath it melted. The coal seam demon. The thing from my father's stories. The creature old miners whispered about when they thought no one was listening. I'd always thought it was just a legend, a way to explain mining accidents and methane explosions. But it was real. God help me, it was real. The demon turned its head, and those burning eyes fixed on me. The temperature spiked, the air shimmered with heat. My skin felt like it was crisping. Then it spoke. Its voice was the sound of rocks grinding together, of fire eating wood, of miners screaming in the dark. Go. I went. I ran faster than I'd ever run in my life, grabbing my skis, not bothering with my pack or equipment or anything except getting away. Behind me, the demon roared. Trees exploded into flame. Snow vaporized into steam. I skied through darkness, using only starlight to see, following my own tracks back toward the ranger station. Every time I looked back, I saw fire on the horizon. The demon wasn't following me. It was spreading out, moving through the forest, leaving a trail of burning destruction. It was free. After 15 years trapped underground, feeding on coal fire, it was finally free. And I had no idea how to stop it. I made it to the ranger station just as the sun came up. Collapsed on the floor, shaking from exhaustion and terror. My satellite phone was gone, lost in the snow, but the station phone still worked. I called Martinez, told him everything. He didn't believe me at first, who would? But the terror in my voice must have convinced him something was seriously wrong. We've got the access road clear, he said. Fire crews are on their way. ETA 2 hours. Can you hold until then? I looked out the window toward Blackwood Mine. Smoke rose in a thick column, visible even from 30 miles away. The demon was still there, still burning. I don't know, I said honestly. Tom, listen. I found someone who might be able to help. Janet Brooks, mine safety engineer. She's worked on underground fires all over the country. She's coming with the fire crews. Janet Brooks. I knew that name. She'd written half the safety manuals I'd studied for my rescue certification. If anyone knew how to fight an underground fire, it was her. Tell her to bring everything she's got, I said. This isn't a normal fire. She knows. I told her your story. She wants to talk to you when she arrives. The next 2 hours were the longest of my life. I used the time to prepare. Gathered every fire suppression tool in the station. Extinguishers, fire blankets, breathing apparatus. Not enough to fight a demon made of living fire, but better than nothing. I also did research. If the old miners had stories about the coal seam demon, maybe they had stories about how to fight it. The ranger station had a small library of local history books. I tore through them, looking for anything relevant. Found it in a book about Appalachian mining folklore. A chapter titled The Fire That Walks. According to the legends, the coal seam demon was an ancient spirit that lived deep in the earth, feeding on heat and gas and pressure. Miners sometimes woke it accidentally when they dug too deep or hit the wrong seam. When awakened, it would kill anyone nearby, consuming their heat, their breath, their life. But it could be fought. The old stories said it had weaknesses: water, in large quantities, enough to drown the fires it fed on, cold iron, Not steel, not alloy, pure iron, the kind the old-time miners used. And most importantly, cutting off its air supply. It was still fire, even if it was alive. No oxygen meant no combustion. The book also said the demon would keep growing stronger as long as underground fires burned. The Blackwood mine fire had been feeding it for 15 years. By now, it would be nearly unstoppable, unless I could starve it out. I was working on a plan when the fire crews arrived. 3 trucks, maybe 20 firefighters. Martinez rode in the lead vehicle along Gan, with a woman in her 50s wearing mine safety gear. Janet Brooks looked like she'd spent her whole life underground, tough, competent, no nonsense. She shook my hand and got right to business. "Show me what we're dealing with," she said. We drove as close to the mine as the trucks could get, about a mile away. The snow had melted in a half-mile radius. The ground was scorched black. Trees were burning. The air stank of sulfur and burning coal. And in the middle of it all, the demon paced. Still 12 feet tall, still burning, still destroying everything it touched. As we watched, it reached out and touched a boulder. The rock glowed red, then white, then collapsed into molten slag. "Jesus Christ," Martinez whispered. Janet just stared. After a long moment, she said, "Your story didn't do it justice." "Can we fight it?" I asked. She thought for a moment. "Maybe. That thing is pure heat and combustion. It needs 3 things to survive: fuel, oxygen, and ignition temperature. Right now, it's feeding on the underground coal fire. As long as that fire burns, it can regenerate faster than we can hurt it. So we put out the fire? Easier said than done. The Blackwood fire has been burning for 15 years. Miles of underground tunnels, all actively combusting. It would take months to flood the mine completely. We don't have months." "No," she agreed. "We don't. But there might be another way." She pulled out a map of the mine. "The fire started here, in the main seam. It's been spreading slowly through the tunnel system. But the main combustion chamber, the heart of the fire, is here." She pointed to a spot deep underground. "If we could collapse that chamber, cut off the air supply to the core of the fire, the demon might weaken enough to fight." "How do we collapse it?" She smiled grimly. "With more fire. A controlled explosion, big enough to bring down the tunnel system, but contained enough not to spread the crisis. Fire further. It'll take maybe an hour to set up, and someone has to go down there to do it. Someone with underground experience. Someone who knows mine rescue and fire behavior." She looked at me. "Someone like you." I'd known it was coming. Still didn't want to hear it. "I'll go," I said. The plan was desperate and probably impossible. Janet and I would enter the mine through a ventilation shaft on the far side of the fire zone. We'd plant explosives in the main combustion chamber, collapse the tunnel, and get out before the blast. Meanwhile, the fire crews would distract the demon, keep it away from the mine entrance. Simple. Suicidal. But it was all we had. We geared up breathing apparatus, protective suits, headlamps, rope, explosives. Enough C4 to bring down a building. The fire crews moved into position. Martinez grabbed my arm before I left. "You come back," he said. "You hear me? You come back." I didn't promise. Couldn't. The ventilation. The shaft was barely wide enough for one person. Janet went first, I followed. Down into darkness, into heat, into hell. The air grew hotter with every foot we descended. By the time we reached the bottom, maybe 300 feet down, the temperature had to be 140 degrees. Breathing was like inhaling steam. The tunnels down here were worse than anything I'd seen before. The walls glowed red, the air shimmered. My suit kept me alive, but just barely. Janet moved with the confidence of someone who'd been in 100 mines, under 1,000 tons of rock. I followed her, trying not to think about how far underground we were. We heard the demon above us. Its roaring echoed through the tunnels, making the walls shake. The fire crews were doing their job, keeping it distracted. But for how long? 20 minutes of crawling through heat and darkness brought us to the main chamber. It was massive, maybe 100 feet across. The ceiling, 50 feet high. The walls were on fire. Not glowing, actually burning somehow. Flames licked across solid rock. In the center of the chamber, a coal seam burned white hot, so bright it hurt to look at. This was the heart of the fire. the demon's feeding ground. There, Janet said, pointing to support columns around the chamber's edge. Plant charges on those supports. Blow them, the whole ceiling comes down, buries the fire under 1,000,000 tons of rock. We worked fast, placing C4 on each column, wiring them together. The heat was unbearable. Sweat poured off me inside the suit. My hands shook. The air tasted like burning metal. We were almost done when the ground shook. The demon had found us. It came through the tunnel like a freight train, too big for the space, but forcing its way through anyway. Rock melted around it. The temperature spiked so high that my suit's insulation started failing. Janet screamed something I couldn't hear over the roar. The demon reached for me. Its hand was molten rock and fire. I dove aside, felt the heat wash past. Where I'd been standing, the ground turned to lava. "Blow it," I shouted. "Blow the charges now. We're still inside." "Do it." Janet hit the detonator. The world exploded. I remember flying through the air, hitting something hard, then nothing but heat and noise and darkness falling. The tunnel collapsed. Thousands of tons of rock came down, burying the fire chamber, burying the demon, burying us. I woke up in a hospital bed 3 days later. Janet Brooks sat in a chair next to me. Her arm was in a cast. Burns covered half her face. But she was alive. "How?" I croaked. "Emergency air pocket," she said. "When the ceiling came down, it created a void space. Rescue teams dug us out after 8 hours. You've got a concussion, 3 cracked ribs, and second-degree burns on 40% of your body. But you'll live." "The demon?" Her expression darkened. "Buried under half a mountain. The fire's out. Completely out for the first time in 15 years. No more heat, no more combustion. It's dead." I wanted to believe her. Almost did. But I'd seen that thing's eyes. Seen how it moved, how it burned. Things that old, that powerful, don't die easy. "You're sure?" I asked. She hesitated. "Just for a second. As sure as I can be." 2 months later, they cleared me for light duty. I should have gone back to Monongahela Forest. Should have returned to my ranger station, my trails, my mountains. I couldn't do it. Couldn't handle being that close to the Blackwood mine. Couldn't stop seeing that demon's burning eyes every time I closed my own. I transferred west. Arizona now, Coconino National Forest. Completely different geology. No coal seams, no underground fires. Just dry heat and desert sun. I don't sleep well anymore. Can't shake the feeling that somewhere, deep underground, something is still burning. Still waiting. Still hungry. The official. The report said, the survey team died from toxic gas exposure and thermal stress. No mention of the demon. No mention of the impossible. Janet and I agreed not to talk about it. Who would believe us anyway? But sometimes I get calls from other rangers. Ones who work near old mines, near underground fires. They tell me about strange temperature readings. About sounds in the earth, like breathing. About miners who disappear and turn up burned from the inside out. I tell them what I know. Tell them about cold iron and water and cutting off the air supply. Tell them to trust their instincts. And I tell them the truth I learned in that mine. There are things that live in the deep places. Things that fed on heat and darkness since before humans existed. We disturbed them when we started digging. Woke them up with our fires and our machines. Most of the time, they stay buried. Most of the time, we're safe. But sometimes, a coal seam catches fire. Sometimes, a mine burns for years, decades, feeding something ancient and terrible. Sometimes, that thing gets strong enough to break free. If you ever see smoke rising from old mine works, stay away. If you hear about underground fires burning in abandoned tunnels, don't investigate. And if you ever see ground so hot it glows in the dark, run. Some fires burn for reasons science can't explain. Some fires have teeth. My name is Thomas McBride. I've been a forest ranger for 19 years. I thought I knew everything about fire. I was wrong. And somewhere deep in the Appalachian Mountains, under 1,000,000 tons of rock, something is still dreaming of the day it will burn again. My name is William Harrington, but everyone calls me Bill. I've been a ranger at Pisgah National Forest for 13 years now, and in all that time, I thought I'd seen everything these mountains could throw at me. Lost hikers, Bear encounters, flash floods, you name it, I've handled it. But I never believed in the old stories. The mountain witch tales, the curses, all that folklore stuff. I collected those stories, sure. Even published a couple papers about Appalachian legends. But I never thought any of it was real. I should have listened to my grandmother. It was late October 1989 when everything changed. I was stationed up near Grandfather Mountain, one of the most remote peaks in North Carolina. Beautiful country, but harsh. The kind of place where the weather can turn on you in minutes, where a sunny morning becomes a deadly blizzard by noon. At 37, I'd learned to respect these mountains, just not to fear them. Not yet, anyway. The call came in on a Tuesday morning. A hiking group, 5 people from Charlotte, had missed their check-in time. They were supposed to come down from Raven's Roost the day before, but nobody had seen them. Raven's Roost was a nasty climb, about 20 miles from the nearest road. The peak got its name from all the ravens that circle up there, thick black clouds of them, always watching. Local folks avoided that mountain, said it was cursed. Said a woman was burned there back in the 1700s, accused of witchcraft. According to the stories, she swore revenge with her last breath, cursed the mountain and everyone who set foot on it. The old-timers claimed she was still up there, controlling the weather, commanding the animals, waiting for the descendants of the people who killed her. Like I said, I collected those stories, documented them, never believed them. My supervisor, Davis, handed me the file on the missing group. Weather Service says conditions were perfect yesterday, he said. Clear. Skies, mild temperatures. No reason they wouldn't have made it down. I looked at the map, tracing the route with my finger. Standard trail, nothing too difficult for experienced hikers. I'll head up there this morning. Probably just got turned around or someone twisted an ankle. Take Ezra with you, Davis said. He knows that area better than anyone. Ezra Millsaps was a local guide, maybe 60 years old, with a face like weathered leather and eyes that never seemed to blink. His family had lived in these mountains for 200 years. He knew every trail, every stream, every hidden cave. But he also believed in the old stories, believed in them hard. When I picked him up that morning, he took one look at the mountain and shook his head. Don't like this, Bill. Don't like it one bit. Come on, Ezra. Just a standard search and rescue. Raven's Roost ain't standard. He climbed into my truck anyway, but I could see his hands shaking a little as he buckled his seatbelt. My grandfather saw her once, the witch. Said she was tall as a tree, with eyes like storm clouds. Your grandfather was probably drunk, I said, but I kept my tone light. Ezra was a good man, just superstitious. He never drank a drop in his life, and you know it. We drove in silence after that, the truck bouncing along the old forest road. The trees pressed in close on both sides, their leaves turning gold and red in the autumn sun. It should have been beautiful, but something felt wrong. The birds were too quiet. Even the wind seemed to be holding its breath. When we reached the trailhead, my radio crackled. It was Davis. Bill, you there? Yeah, go ahead. Weather Service just updated their forecast. They're showing a storm system moving in fast. Wasn't there an hour ago. Says, you might get snow up at elevation. I looked up at the sky, clear and blue, not a cloud anywhere. That doesn't make sense. It's perfect up here. I'm just telling you what they said. Be careful. Ezra was already out of the truck, checking his pack. When I told him about the forecast, his face went pale. She's angry, he whispered. She knows we're coming. It's just weather, Ezra. But as we started up the trail, I noticed something strange. The temperature was dropping. Fast. I could see my breath now, even though it had been 60 degrees when we left the truck 20 minutes ago. And the ravens, God, the ravens were everywhere. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands, all circling above us in a massive spiral. Their caws echoed off the mountains, harsh and angry, like they were trying to warn us away. Or maybe they were laughing at us. We'd been hiking for about 2 hours when we found the first body. Jennifer Walsh, 28 years old according to her driver's license. She was sitting upright against a tree, her eyes wide open, staring at nothing. Her skin was blue-white, covered in frost. But here's the thing that made my blood run cold. It was 45 degrees out. Cool for October, sure, but not freezing. Not even close to freezing. How is this possible? I touched her arm. It was hard as stone, frozen solid. Ezra backed away, making some kind of sign with his hand. She's been marked. The witch got her. People don't freeze to death in 40-degree weather, I said, but my voice didn't sound convincing even to me. I'd seen plenty of hypothermia cases over the years. This wasn't hypothermia. This was something else entirely. I radioed down to Davis, told him what we'd found. He said he'd send up the recovery team and told us to keep looking for the others. 4 people still missing. As we continued up the trail, the temperature kept dropping. Now it really was cold, maybe 30 degrees, and my weather gauge was going crazy. The needle kept jumping around like it couldn't decide what the real temperature was. The barometric pressure was all wrong too, fluctuating wildly. Nothing made sense. "Look at the trees," Ezra said. I looked. The leaves weren't just falling, they were dying right before our eyes. Curling up brown and black, withering on the branches. And the forest had gone completely silent. No birds, no squirrels, no insects, nothing. Just the wind, moaning through the dead branches. Then I saw the tracks. They started out normal enough boot prints in the soft dirt of the trail. But about 10 yards ahead, something changed. The boot prints became something else. Something with claws. Big claws, like a bear, but the stride was all wrong. The prints kept the same spacing, the same gait, as if someone had been walking and just transformed. "Tell me you see that too," I said to Ezra. He nodded, his face gray. "We should go back. 4 people are still up there. 4 people are probably dead up there, just like Jennifer. Just like we're gonna be if we don't turn around right now." But I couldn't turn around. It was my job to find those people, to bring them home. Even if they were dead, their families deserved to know. So I kept walking, following those impossible tracks up the mountain, and Ezra followed me because that's what mountain people do. They don't leave their friends behind. The snow started falling about 30 minutes later. Big wet flakes that shouldn't exist in October, not down at this elevation. Within minutes, the world turned white. The trail disappeared. The trees became ghostly shadows, and the temperature dropped to what felt like 0. "Bill." Ezra grabbed my arm, pointing up ahead. There was someone standing on the trail. An old woman in a long, dark dress that looked like it came from colonial times. She was impossibly tall, maybe 7 feet, and thin as a skeleton. Her hair hung down in gray ropes, and even from 50 feet away, I could see her eyes. They were the color of thunderclouds, swirling and dark and full of hate. "Mrs. Walsh?" I called out. It was stupid, but my brain was trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Maybe it was one of the missing hikers. Maybe the cold was making me see things wrong. The woman smiled. Her teeth were black. "Harrington," she said, and her voice was like wind through a grave. "I've waited so long for your family to come back to my mountain." "What are you talking about?" But even as I asked, I remembered my grandmother's stories. My great-great-great-grandfather had been a judge at witch trials, right here in these mountains, back in 1764. "Your blood condemned me," the woman said, "burned me alive while I screamed. The flames took my body, but not my soul, not my power. And now, every generation, I collect what's owed." She raised her hand, and the wind screamed. The snow turned into a blizzard. So thick I couldn't see Ezra even though he was standing right next to me. The cold bit through my jacket, my shirt, my skin. It felt like it was reaching for my bones, trying to freeze me from the inside out. I heard Ezra yelling something, but the wind tore his words away. I stumbled forward, blind, my hands out in front of me. My face was going numb. My fingers wouldn't work right. Then something huge slammed into me from the side, something with fur and muscle and the smell of the wild. I went down hard, hitting the frozen ground with my shoulder. Claws raked across my back. I rolled, reaching for the bear spray on my belt, but my hands were too cold to grip it. The thing on top of me wasn't a bear. It had the body of a wolf, but the face was almost human. Its eyes were Jennifer Walsh's eyes, blue and terrified and completely aware. She was still in there, trapped in this twisted animal body, forced to hunt her own species. I screamed, kicked, got my arms up just as jaws snapped at my throat, hot breath on my face, saliva dripping onto my cheeks. A gunshot cracked through the storm. The wolf thing yelped and fell, sideways. Ezra appeared out of the white, his hunting rifle still smoking. "Run!" he shouted. We ran, crashed through the forest, slipping on ice, branches whipping at our faces. Behind us, I could hear more of them, more wolf things, howling and snarling. And above it all, that woman's laughter, echoing through the mountains like thunder. We found a small cave about 100 yards off the trail, squeezed inside, barely fitting in the narrow opening. The wolf things prowled outside, their shadows passing back and forth across the entrance. But they didn't come in. It was like something kept them back. "Running water," Ezra gasped, pointing to a tiny stream trickling through the back of the cave. "Old magic can't cross running water." My hands were shaking so bad I could barely hold my flashlight. "This isn't happening. This can't be happening." "It's happening, Bill, and it's happening because of you, because of your family." "My family didn't do anything. That was 200 years ago. Blood debts don't expire in these mountains." Ezra was wrapping his jacket around himself, his teeth chattering. "My grandfather told me the stories, told me the witch's name, Elspeth Crane. They said she could call the storms, make crops fail, turn men's hearts to ice. The town elders decided she had to die. Your great-great-great-grandfather signed the death warrant. Even if that's true, what am I supposed to do about it now?" "Find her bones," Ezra said. "That's what keeps her tied to this mountain. Find them and burn them, break her hold on this place. And if I don't," Ezra looked at me with old, tired eyes, "then she'll hunt your family forever. She'll kill everyone who comes to this mountain. And she won't stop until every drop of Harrington blood is spilled." Outside the cave, the wind howled like a living thing. The snow kept falling. And somewhere out there in the storm, a very old, very angry witch was waiting for me to come out. We spent the night in that cave, huddled together for warmth, taking turns, keeping watch. The wolf things circled outside until dawn, their eyes glowing in the darkness. Every time I started to drift off, I'd see Jennifer Walsh's face on that twisted animal body, and I'd jerk awake with my heart hammering. When morning finally came, the storm had passed. The world was buried under 2 feet of snow that shouldn't exist. October snow this heavy, this low, it was impossible. But impossible was the new normal. We radioed down to Davis, told him we'd found one body, needed immediate evac, conditions were dangerous. He said they'd send a helicopter, but the weather had to clear first. Looking up at the sky, I could see more clouds gathering. Dark ones, building into something big. "She won't let us leave," Ezra said. "Not until she gets what she wants. Then we give her what she wants." I checked my pack, took stock of what we had. Matches, rope, my grandfather's Bible, that I always carried for luck. "You said, we need to find her bones. Where would they be?" "The trial records say they burned her at the summit of Raven's Roost. Big stone circle up there, old as the mountains themselves. Cherokee holy site before the white folks came. The town elders thought burning her in a sacred place would keep her spirit from rising." He laughed bitterly. They were wrong. We started climbing. The trail was buried, but Ezra knew the way, by the shape of the mountains, by the angle of the trees. My back hurt where the wolf thing had clawed me, and every step made my shoulder throb. But we kept moving because stopping meant freezing to death or worse. We found the second body around noon. Marcus Thompson, the trail guide who'd been leading the group. He was lying in the middle of a clearing, blackened and smoking like he'd been struck by lightning. But the sky was overcast, no thunderstorm, no electricity, and his body was still burning, little flames, dancing across his skin without consuming him. His mouth was open in a silent scream. "Don't touch him," Ezra warned. "Witch fire, it'll spread to you." We gave the body a wide berth and kept climbing. The temperature was dropping again. My weather gauge had given up entirely, the needle just spinning uselessly. The air felt thick, hard to breathe, like the mountain itself was pressing down on us. That's when we found the research station. It was a small cabin, maybe 15 feet square, built by the Forestry Service for scientists studying the local ecosystem. Dr. Patricia Mills was supposed to be up here, doing something with soil samples. When we pushed open the door, we found her. She was sitting at her desk, her back to us, looking at her computer screen. For a second, I thought she was alive. Then she turned around. Dr. Mills was maybe 30 years old, according to her file. The woman looking at us was ancient. Her skin was like thin paper, covered in liver spots. Her hair was pure white, thin and wispy. Her hands were gnarled with arthritis. She'd aged 50 years overnight. "Help me," she croaked. "Please." I disturbed. "The stones." And she came. She came and she. Her voice trailed off into a wet, rattling cough. "What stones?" I asked, but I already knew. Dr. Mills pointed a shaking finger at her computer. On the screen was a photograph of a stone circle, ancient rocks covered in moss and strange symbols. And in the center of the circle, barely visible under centuries of dirt and debris, was a small bundle wrapped in rotting cloth. "I moved one of the stones," Dr. Mills whispered. "Wanted to carbon date it." She appeared. Said I'd broken the seal. Said I'd die old and alone. Everyone I ever loved already dead. Everyone who would remember me gone. Tears ran down her wrinkled face. "My children. Did I have children? I can't remember. Did I have a life before this?" Ezra made that sign again, the one to ward off. "Evil. Where's the circle?" "North Summit, half-mile up." "Doctor." Mills's breathing was getting worse. "Don't go. She's waiting. She's always waiting." "We have to," I said. "We have to end this. Can't end it. Too old, too powerful. The mountain is hers now, forever hers." "Doctor." Mills slumped forward, and I heard her last breath rattle out. She died looking about 80 years old, her whole life stolen in a single night. I wanted to vomit. I wanted to run down the mountain and never come back. But I thought about Jennifer Walsh, frozen solid, Marcus Thompson, burned alive, Dr. Mills, aged to death, and I thought about all the other people who would come to this mountain, innocent hikers and campers who had nothing to do with witch trials and colonial justice. This had to end, even if it killed me. We left the research station and headed north. The snow was getting deeper, sometimes coming up to our waists. The wind was picking up again, howling through the trees. And the ravens, God, the ravens were back, thousands of them, blocking out what little sun remained. Their shadows made the snow look black. That's when we heard the helicopter. Davis had sent it up despite the weather, probably worried after our last radio call. I could see it above the tree line, a bright orange rescue chopper fighting against the wind. We started waving, shouting, trying to signal our position. Then the ravens attacked. They swarmed the helicopter like a black cloud, smashing into the rotors, the windshield, the tail. I heard the pilot screaming over the radio. The chopper spun, tilted, started to fall. It crashed into the trees about 200 yards from us, and I heard the explosion, saw the fireball rise into the gray sky. Tim Bradley was piloting. Ezra said quietly, "Good man, good friend. 4 deaths now. 4 people dead because a witch wanted revenge on my family. I'm going to kill her," I said. "I don't care if she's already dead. I don't care if she's a ghost or a demon or whatever. I'm going to end this." Ezra put his hand on my shoulder. "Then we better hurry, before she kills us first." We found the stone circle just before dark. It was exactly like in Dr. Mills's photograph, ancient rocks arranged in a perfect circle, maybe 30 feet across. Strange symbols were carved into the stones, old Cherokee markings mixed with something else, something older and darker. In the center of the circle was a small mound of stones, and underneath those stones, I knew, were the bones of Elspeth Crane. The temperature dropped to what felt like 20 below. My breath came out in white clouds. Ice was forming on my eyebrows, my beard. Ezra's lips were turning blue. "We need to dig," I said. "Need to expose the bones. She won't let us. Then we fight her." I started pulling away the stones, my hands already going numb. Ezra helped, both of us working as fast as we could. The wind screamed around, thus. The ravens dove at our heads, their claws raking at our faces. But we kept digging. That's when she appeared. Elspeth Crane materialized in front of us, 7 feet tall, her storm cloud eyes blazing with hate. She was more solid now, more real. I could see every detail of her burned skin, every scar from the flames that killed her. Her dress was charred and tattered. Her fingers ended in long, black nails like claws. "You dare," she hissed. "You dare disturb my rest. Your blood will soak this mountain, Harrington. Your screams will echo forever." She raised her hands, and the stones around us began to move. Not falling, rising, floating up into the air, spinning faster and faster. One of them hit Ezra in the head. He went down hard, blood pouring from a cut above his eye. I pulled out my grandfather's Bible, held it in front of me like a shield. It was the only thing I could think of, the only weapon I had. Elspeth laughed. You think your God can save you? Where was your God when they burned me? When they held me down and lit the fire and laughed while I screamed? I don't know, I said. But my grandfather trusted this book, and his grandfather before him, and I'm trusting it now. I started reading the 23rd Psalm because it was the only one I remembered by heart. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want, Elspeth screamed. It was the sound of wind and ice and fury, loud enough to make my ears ring. The stones fell, clattering to the ground. The ravens scattered. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. I kept reading, kept digging with one hand while holding the Bible in the other. My fingers closed around something cloth, old and rotting. I pulled, and bones came with it. A skull, yellowed with age. Ribs. A spine. Stop! Elspeth shrieked. You don't understand. They murdered me, burned me alive for helping people, for healing the sick. I was innocent. Maybe you were, I said. But you're not innocent now. You've killed innocent people. You've become the monster they said you were. I'll kill you. I'll freeze you solid. I'll age you to dust. I dumped the bones on the ground and pulled out my matches. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely strike one. But finally, a flame caught. No, Elspeth whispered. No, please. Don't send me into the darkness. Don't make me die again. You should have thought of that before you killed Jennifer Walsh. I dropped the match. The bones caught fire immediately, burning with that same supernatural flame I'd seen on Marcus Thompson's body. Elspeth screamed, a sound of pure agony that went on and on. She clawed at the air, at her own body, as the flames consumed her from the inside out. Curse you, she gasped. Curse you and your children and your children's children. The mountains will remember. The mountains will always remember. Then she was gone, just smoke and ash, drifting away on the wind. The temperature immediately jumped 20 degrees. The ravens dispersed. The clouds broke apart, and actual sunlight came through for the first time in 2 days. Ezra groaned and sat up, touching his bleeding head. Did we win? I think so, I said, but I wasn't sure. I could still feel something in the air, something old and angry and patient. The kind of thing that could wait another 200 years if it had to. But we weren't done yet. As the bones burned, the ground beneath the stone circle started to shake. At first, I thought it was just my imagination, the stress and cold playing tricks on my mind. Then cracks appeared in the frozen earth, spreading out from the fire like black lightning. Bill, Ezra said, his voice tight with fear. Bill, we need to move. What's happening? The binding. We broke the binding that kept her trapped here. But it was holding back something else, too. The cracks widened. I could hear something. Down there, beneath the mountain, a rumbling, grinding sound like massive stones sliding against each other. And voices. Dozens of voices, maybe hundreds, all whispering in languages I didn't understand. The others, Ezra said. All the other people she killed over the years. She bound their spirits here too, kept them as servants. Now they're free. The ground opened up, a chasm maybe 20 feet wide, splitting the stone circle in half. Cold air rushed out, so cold it hurt to breathe. And with it came the spirits. They rose up like mist, taking shape as they emerged. Men and women in clothes from different centuries, colonial dress, pioneer clothing, modern hiking gear, all of them pale and transparent. All of them staring at me with empty eyes. We're trapped, one of them whispered. It was a man in a ranger uniform from the 1950 seconds. She wouldn't let us go, wouldn't let us rest. You're free now, I said. She's gone. You can move on. Can we? A woman in Nidus and W2B, pioneer dress, drifted closer. Her throat had been cut, the wound still visible across her ghostly neck. Do you know what she did to us? What she made us do. We hunted the living. We fed on their fear. We became monsters just like her. The spirits were surrounding us now, dozens of them, forming a circle. The temperature dropped again. My breath froze in my throat. "Wait," I said. "This wasn't your fault. You were victims too." "Were we?" The 1,950 Ranger smiled, and it wasn't a friendly smile. After a while, we started to enjoy it. The hunt, the kill, the taste of terror. And now we're free to do whatever we want. They surged forward all at once. I grabbed Ezra and pulled him toward the edge of the chasm. It was a crazy move, suicidal probably, but the spirits were between us and any other escape route. We jumped, and for a horrible moment, I thought we were going to fall straight down into whatever hell existed beneath the mountain. Instead, we landed on a ledge, maybe 10 feet down. The impact knocked the wind out of me, and I felt my ribs crack. Ezra wasn't moving. Blood was pooling under his head. "Ezra!" I shook him, got no response. The spirits appeared at the edge of the chasm, looking down at us. They were laughing now, a sound like wind chimes made of bones. "You can't run," they said, speaking in unison. "You can't hide. The mountain is ours now. All of it. Forever." I looked around desperately for some way out. The ledge we were on was narrow, maybe 3 feet wide. Below us, the chasm went down into darkness. The walls were sheer rock, impossible to climb. We were trapped. Then, I saw it, a small opening in the rock face, just big enough to squeeze through. A cave, or maybe a tunnel. Our only chance. I grabbed Ezra, threw him over my shoulder in a fireman's carry. He was heavy, and my ribs screamed in protest, but I managed to stumble toward the opening. The spirits were descending now, floating down into the chasm, after us. "You carry the blood of murderers," they hissed. "You deserve to die here, to join us, to become one of us." I squeezed into the tunnel. It was tight, barely wide enough for my shoulders, and I had to drag Ezra behind me. The spirits followed, their translucent hands reaching for my ankles. One of them got hold of my boot, and I felt cold shoot up my leg like poison. "No," I kicked, connected with something that felt like frozen air. The spirit let go, howling. The tunnel went deeper, darker. I couldn't see anything, just felt my way forward with my free hand while dragging Ezra with the other. My ribs felt like they were on fire. Every breath was agony, but I kept moving because stopping meant dying. Then I saw light ahead, actual daylight streaming through a crack in the rock. I pulled Ezra toward it, squeezed through the opening, and we tumbled out onto a snow-covered slope. We were on the north side of the mountain, about halfway down. The forest stretched out below us, and beyond that, I could see the road. Tiny vehicles moving like toys. The spirits didn't follow. Maybe they couldn't leave the chasm. Maybe sunlight hurt them. I didn't know and didn't care. We were alive. Ezra groaned and opened his eyes. "Did we make it?" "Yeah," I said. "We made it." But even as I said it, I heard her voice one last time. Elspeth Crane, whispering on the wind. "This mountain is mine. The spirits are mine. Your debt is paid, Harrington, but the curse remains. Tell your children. Tell everyone. Stay away from Raven's Roost, or join the dead who walk here." Then silence. We made our way down the mountain slowly, painfully. It took us 6 hours to reach the road. My supervisor Davis was there with an ambulance and half the state police. "Jesus Christ, Bill," he said. "We thought you were dead. The helicopter crashed. We lost all radio contact. What the hell happened up there?" I looked at Ezra. He looked at me. We both knew no one would believe the truth. "Freak weather," I said. "Unprecedented cold snap. Found 3 bodies, couldn't recover them. We need to close that area. Permanently." Davis frowned. "Close it? That's prime hiking territory." "Close it," I repeated. "Or more people will die." Something in my voice must have convinced him. Within a week, Raven's Roost was officially closed to the public, fenced off with warning signs. The official report blamed severe weather anomalies and unstable geology. But I knew the truth. The mountain remembered. The spirits remembered. And they were waiting. That was 36 years ago. I'm 73 now, retired from the Forest Service, living in a small cabin about 50 miles from Grandfather Mountain. I never went back to Raven's Roost. Never will. But I hear things. Other rangers, younger ones who don't know the stories, they tell me about strange experiences in that area. Hikers who get lost even though the trail is clearly marked. Unexplained cold spots in the middle of summer. Ravens that follow people for miles. And sometimes, not often, but sometimes people who disappear completely, gone without a trace. The official records list 5 deaths on Raven's Roost in October 1989. Jennifer Walsh, Marcus Thompson, Dr. Patricia Mills, Tim Bradley, and this is the part that keeps me up at night. A weather service technician named Frank Rodriguez. They found his body 3 months after we came down from the mountain. He was encased in ice, perfectly preserved, even though it was January and the temperature hadn't dropped below freezing all week. The ice formation around him was 6 feet tall, shaped like a woman reaching down to embrace him. The coroner said he'd been dead since October, said he'd frozen to death. But the coroner didn't see what I saw in the ice symbols, old Cherokee markings mixed with something else, something older and darker. I documented everything that happened, wrote it all down, sent copies to the Forest Service, to historical societies, to anyone who would listen. Most people ignored it. Some called me crazy, but a few, the old mountain folks, the ones who remembered the stories, they believed me. Ezra died 5 years after Raven's Roost. Heart attack, they said. But I went to see him right before the end, and he told me something that made my blood run cold. She came to me in a dream, he said. Elspeth. Said the binding wasn't broken, just changed. Said the spirits are still there, still hungry, still waiting. Said one day someone's gonna cut down those warning signs, gonna open that trail again, and when they do, he died before he could finish the sentence. I've spent the last 3 decades researching Appalachian witch legends, traveling to other mountains, talking to other rangers and guides, and I found something disturbing. Something that suggests Raven's Roost isn't unique. There are dozens of peaks throughout the Appalachians with similar stories. Places where accused witches were executed. Places where the old-timers refused to go. Places where people disappear and the weather does impossible things. All of them have stone circles. All of them have ravens. I think the witch trials in these mountains didn't end with execution. I think they created something worse. Something that's been waiting, growing stronger, feeding on the fear and death of innocent people who stumble into the wrong places. Last month, I got a call from a young ranger, 26 years old, fresh out of college, full of enthusiasm. She wanted to interview me for a research project about local folklore. We met at a diner, and I told her my story. All of it. She listened politely, took notes, smiled at all the right places. Then, as she was leaving, she mentioned that the Forest Service was considering reopening Raven's Roost for the hiking season. Budget cuts, she said. Pressure from tourism groups. The signs. We're coming down next spring. You can't, I said. You absolutely can't do that. Mr. Harrington, with all due respect, that was almost 40 years ago. Whatever happened up there, it's over now. I wanted to argue. Wanted to tell her about Frank Rodriguez, about the ice shaped like a woman, about Ezra's warning, but I could see in her eyes that she'd already made up her mind. I was just a crazy old man with crazy old stories. So I'm writing this down, publishing it where people can find it, where maybe, hopefully, it'll make someone think twice before hiking up to Raven's Roost when they reopen it. If you're reading this, if you're planning to visit the Grandfather Mountain area, please listen to me. Stay away from Raven's Roost. Don't let the beautiful views tempt you. Don't let the adventure of a supposedly haunted trail lure you in. The mountain remembers. The spirits remember. And they're hungry. Some debts can't be paid with one life. Some curses can't be broken with fire and prayer. Some places should stay closed, stay forgotten, stay cursed. Because the alternative is worse than any witch's revenge. I see them sometimes, in my dreams. All the people who died on that mountain. Jennifer Walsh, with her frozen eyes. Marcus Thompson burning forever. Dr. Patricia Mills, aging and aging, never quite dying. And the others, the hundreds of others who died over 2 centuries, all trapped in the stone circle, all waiting for the next fool who doesn't believe in mountain witch stories. I believed. God help me, I believed too late. And if you're smart, you'll believe too. Stay away from Raven's Roost. Tell your friends, tell your family, Tell anyone who'll listen. The mountains don't forget, and neither does she. My name is William Harrington, and I'm probably the only ranger in the Pisgah National Forest who wishes certain places could stay off the map forever. Please, if you take nothing else from this, to story, take this. Some trails should never be opened. Some mountains should never be climbed. And some old stories, the really old ones, the ones that make your grandmother cross herself and spit those stories, are told for a reason. They're not to entertain you, they're to save your life.